Chapter 1464. The man in the black light killed his way into the depths of the world behind the door. All of this happened very quickly and was completed in an instant. Chu Feng was speechless. Did it just fly away like that? He looked on helplessly as the bronze chunk on his body flew away inexplicably. It was like a cooked duck flying away on its own. What the hell? The rectangular bronze chunk had a great origin. It came from the deepest part of the Taishang Forbidden Area and was suspected to be related to a certain celestial emperor. It had come from a bronze coffin. You have something on you, so you ran away on your own. Zi Luan's large eyes were bright and the corners of her mouth were curled up. She reminded him while holding back a smile. It was rare to see Great Demon Chu's depressed expression as if he were constipated. She was indeed in a good mood. It could be said that her appearance was born from her heart. Her face was as bright as the sun and she snorted inwardly. Who told you to always bully me? Chu Feng very calmly and naturally knocked down 3 fingers on her head. Her eyes rolled back and she almost fainted. Chu Feng had been staring in a certain direction all along. He sensed that the pull from the depths of the soul light cave had taken away the bronze chunk. When he opened his super eyes of fire and gold, he saw a familiar scene. The grid-like path expanded, incomparably deep and connected to a strange and unknown place. He had experienced it himself. His expression turned solemn. Was that the path to the Soul River? He thought of too many things in a moment. The depths of the Soul Light Cave could connect to the Soul River? This inheritance was too shocking. Such a phenomenon wasn't simple and made one's body go cold. Chu Feng immediately realized that a major situation had occurred. The Soul Light Cave could be the external window of that ominous source. It was a great potential danger to the Yang realm. Something big is going to happen today, he said softly. He wasn't too angry about losing the bronze chunk. There was a big problem here. There was bound to be a world-shaking change. Had the bronze chunk flown away to suppress the evil? At the same time, Chu Feng didn't know why, but he also felt a kind of sentimental emotion. He resonated with it and experienced some kind of helplessness, loneliness, longing, and finally the desolation of a sad ending. Someone has passed away? He actually has such strong thoughts. Zi Luan was also bewildered. Something sorrowful seemed to have happened in the depths of the Soul Light Cave. Gradually, she sensed it, and was on the verge of shedding tears. She was infected by some kind of inexplicable emotion. Her heart was pounding as she experienced part of the thoughts of a pitiful woman. At this moment, the Soul Light Cave was silent. Everyone was lying on the ground. Not a single living being could move. This had never happened before. What are we going to do now? Run? Zi Luan asked in a low voice. What are you running for? Now is the time. Before Chu Feng could finish his words, Zi Luan became excited and said, Are we going to pick up the corpses? This time, Chu Feng directly hit her head with 4 fingers and said, Pick up your head. Zi Luan burst into tears. She didn't want to cry, but it was too painful. She felt a bump growing on her head in an instant. Human traffickers were just too annoying. Chu Feng lectured her, saying, Didn't you see that wherever the black light passed, even the rat holes were emptied? What do you expect him to leave behind? The Soul Light Cave is now being suppressed by the vicious man. This is a rare opportunity. Let's pluck out all the immortal medicines on the islands of the Sun River. If we don't take what the heavens have given us, we will be punished instead. The Sun River was very majestic. If one didn't understand it, just looking at it from the front, the surface of the river was like a golden sea with surging waves and golden clouds splashing in all directions. There was an island in front of them that was suffused with a 5-colored halo. The center was especially sacred, and there was even more intense soul power surging. While they were talking, Chu Feng had already landed on the island. The Way of Fortune, he exclaimed. This place was right under the nose of the Soul Light Cave. Normally, there was no one guarding it. Who would dare to come here? There are big insects, Ziluan said in a low voice. No matter how relaxed they were, the Soul Light Cave couldn't possibly leave rare great medicines here. There were 2 snow-white snakes that were twice as thick as a water tank. Their scales were as big as palm leaf fans, and they hissed and flicked their tongues. They had a single horn on their heads, and they coiled into a terrifying snake mountain. There was a huge oppressive feeling as they became a white mountain guarding the medicine field. Divine King Realm. Ziluan patted her chest and cursed inwardly. This broken place in the Yang realm was really not fun. Just by walking around, she would run into some creatures that made her dizzy and tremble. How could it compare to the little nether realm? Her grandfather wasn't at the divine level, but once he set out, he could dominate everything. She could proudly raise her chin and wander around the world. So weak, Chu Feng said. For a moment, Ziluan didn't want to speak. This was too much of a blow. However, this seemed to be her backer. In the future, if Demon Chu wasn't beaten to death and the others smoothly died, then she could use Chu Feng's name to create chaos. With 2 bangs, the 2 white snakes didn't even have time to react before they were knocked down by Chu Feng. When the huge snake mountain collapsed, the earth quaked and the mountain swayed and huge rocks tumbled about. As for domains, they couldn't stop the current heavenly master Chu Feng. He broke through them all. Soul flowers. There were a total of 53 stalks, and each stalk only had 1 flower. They were as big as the mouth of a bowl and contained a dense brilliance. It was hard to tell their specific composition, but they could nourish the soul. After arriving here, Chu Feng's soul light was actually about to leave his body after being illuminated by the soul light. He didn't say anything else and plucked a big flower and stuffed it into his mouth. Chi chi chi. In an instant, the medicine field was bare. All the soul flowers had been dug out and placed in a jade box. What about me? The Tsundra Ziluan wasn't Tsundra anymore. Her eyes were green because she saw Chu Feng's soul light leave his body after he ate a golden flower bud that was as big as the mouth of a bowl. It rose sharply by a chunk. The value of this thing was too shocking. The medicinal effect was practically immediate. Chu Feng wasn't stingy and stuffed one into her mouth. The soul flower was too efficacious. Its fragrance assailed the nostrils and it resonated with the spirit to strengthen one's soul force. This caused the soul light on Ziluan's forehead to leap out like a silver flame. It flickered with resplendent radiance as if it was burning and jumping. Obviously, her soul force had also increased a lot. Whoosh! Chu Feng's movements were extremely fast. When he left the island, he scraped away all the soil in the medicine field. Moreover, during this process, he gnawed on a second soul flower. Its fragrance assailed the nostrils and it melted in his mouth. However, the effect this time was very ordinary. The soul light flickered a few times before returning to tranquility. Could it be that everyone could only eat 1 flower? The human body's resistance to medicine was too much. In the next instant, he arrived on another island. His whole body was burning hot and the whole island was raining fire. There was purple qi everywhere and a rich fragrance overflowed in all directions. There were 6 divine kings guarding the island. There were 2 trees in the center that were no taller than a person. Purple qi steamed and fire rain splashed. The fragrance was wafting precisely from there. The tree body wasn't thick, but the old bark on the branches was cracked. Even the newly grown thin branches were the same as if they had grown a layer of scales. The purple leaves carried a fiery light and were very luxuriant. There were 11 fruits on one tree and 13 on the other tree. The fruits were shaped like apricots and could be as big as an adult's fist. They were fragrant and tempting. The 2 trees were very special. Their roots were rooted in a golden liquid that resembled magma. Was that a substance extracted from the Sun River? It carried the attribute of extreme yang. Purple mist blossomed from the 2 trees and fire rain splashed. Soul fruit. This thing was too astonishing. Even Chu Feng's eyes turned green. On the way here, He had connected to the light net of the Yang realm and carefully understood the soul light cave. This could be considered the most astonishing specialty of the soul light cave. The fruit produced by this kind of soul tree was hard to find in the world. It could only grow here and would be useless even if it was transplanted elsewhere. It wasn't like the soul-strengthening grass and soul flower, which had very few successful transplanting cases. Moreover, the medicinal effect of the soul fruit was higher and more intense. It was far from what the soul-strengthening grass and soul flower could compare to. If it was said that Chu Feng still didn't have absolute confidence in saving Celestial Lord Yushang before this, then such worries didn't exist now. As long as this person was still alive, even if he was on his deathbed, he could still be saved and his soul could be reconstructed. The fruit contained a rich soul substance that was hard to find in the world. There was only one. 6 divine kings had been soundlessly taken down by Chu Feng. How could they resist King Heng, who was rarely seen since ancient times? However, when Chu Feng was about to pluck the soul fruit, an accident occurred. There were actually 2 insects lying on the leaf. They looked like silkworms. They were snow-white and translucent, round and plump, but they were actually quasi-celestial lords. Obviously, they had secret treasures on them that could conceal their auras. Moreover, they were also in deep sleep, quietly guarding the 2 medicinal trees. Now they had been alarmed. Bang bang! The quasi-celestial lords weren't enough. As soon as the 2 insects moved, they were smacked to death by Chu Feng. It was really like an adult trampling on ordinary meat insects. He was convinced that these 2 trees were extraordinary and that the Soul Light Cave was extremely concerned about them. If it wasn't for the fact that one's cultivation had reached the Celestial Lord realm, they would become a leader of a region. Their status would be noble, and it wouldn't be appropriate to casually order them around. This place definitely had to arrange for 2 of them to guard the medicinal garden. Chu Feng directly plucked a fruit. The instant he chewed on it, his soul substance flared up. Very soon, his soul light skyrocketed. At this moment, all the pores on his body gushed out with soul light. The rich soul substance was too strong. It nourished his soul and penetrated his corporeal body. This won't do. It's too wasteful. Chu Feng growled, suppress. He used his body as a furnace to burn his soul light and quench the soul substance to nourish and temper his own soul. At the same time, it also nourished his corporeal body. It actually had benefits. Of course, the most important thing was to strengthen his soul light and soul force. His corporeal body was like a furnace. It compressed his soul light and caused all the soul substance to rumble inside his body, unable to disperse. For a moment, ear-splitting rumbles resounded inside Chu Feng's body. In the end, there was even a sonorous sound as if immortal iron was being hammered. His soul light flickered as it was unceasingly refined by the corporeal body's furnace. The blood of the King Heng physique, which shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries, was like blazing lightning. It streaked continuously through Chu Feng's body until it transformed into mysterious firewood that burned his soul light. Very soon, his soul light underwent a qualitative change. After surging violently, it condensed and took form. It shot out violently like sword chi. After it transformed into a beam of light and rushed out of his body, it roamed the great void and easily tore apart the firmament. The soul fruit is too tyrannical. I was almost burned to death. But this kind of sublimation feeling is very wonderful. My soul light leaving my body to attack alone is equivalent to a kind of terrifying, wonderful technique. The soul light transformed into sword light and returned to his body. It flowed in his blood and flickered between his eyebrows. It was everywhere. The sublimated soul light was world-shocking and all-conquering outside. While it was dormant inside his body, it nourished his corporeal body and brought endless benefit. Ziluan looked on anxiously. Although she yearned for such a rare and precious soul fruit, she was embarrassed to open her mouth because it was really too precious. She also knew that if this kind of thing was given to someone who needed it, the effect would be far more powerful than if she were to consume it. Chu Feng gave her a glance and said, "Don't look anymore. Just those tiny arms and legs of yours are as weak as bean sprouts. If you really bite one, your soul light will be burned to ashes." Ziluan was dispirited. Was she really that disappointing? But not long ago, she was still at the cosmic realm. Looking down on me? Just wait and see. There will be a day when she will awaken her past life and suppress the present world with her cosmic realm corporeal body. She used the method of spiritual victory to console herself. However, Chu Feng looked at her and still plucked a fruit. He used his finger to pinch off a small piece and gave it to her. "It's not that I can't bear to give it to you. Try it first." Ziluan's movements were swift. She was no longer like a delicate girl. She swallowed it in one gulp and didn't even have time to taste its flavor. After that, she cried out, "It's on fire! The raging flames are soaring straight into the 33 heavens." Indeed, her whole body was on fire, especially the top of her skull. Her soul left her body and transformed into a fiery light. It wanted to soar into the sky and burn wantonly. Chu Feng hurriedly took action. It was really as he had expected. This thing wasn't prepared for low-level evolvers at all. Even a celestial venerable could barely handle it. He helped to suppress and refine it. Only then did Ziluan endure it. After recovering her injured body and soul light, she obtained a lot of benefit. Her divine soul was stable and rose sharply. "Look for me when you reach the celestial venerable realm." After Chu Feng finished speaking, he swallowed the fruit in his hand that was gushing with purple clouds. As expected, his body was even more resplendent this time. The soul substance was sealed inside his body. It flickered violently and made sonorous noises. It was even more intense than the sound of iron being struck. "It's on fire!" Ziluan cried out. "I've helped you put it out." Chu Feng suppressed the soul force inside his body. He used his blood as a fire to burn his soul light and let out continuous rumbling sounds. "I'm talking about you. Look, you're about to be burned to a crisp." Ziluan pointed at where his heel was. Chu Feng also somewhat sensed it, but it really didn't hurt. Now that he lowered his head to look, he discovered that his foot was indeed on fire. Even though it hadn't injured his body, it was still a definite threat. At the very least, a pair of extremely high-grade combat boots had been burned a little. This fire isn't normal. Chu Feng uprooted the 2 trees and completely put away the soul tree. Then, he blasted the ground with his fist. Immediately, magma splashed in all directions and the earth ruptured. This island was completely pierced through. Apart from the expected solar essence flame that was drawn from that great golden river, there was also a mysterious energy that came from a certain tunnel. Chu Feng's pupils contracted as he saw a very narrow tunnel. Wisps of soul substance were flowing in it. Moreover, this tunnel was in the shape of a grid. It was as if a tangible ultrasonic wave was expanding, and there seemed to be glowing ripples undulating as they constructed this kind of road. Chu Feng's heart was pounding violently. He immediately realized where this led to, the Soul River. No wonder there isn't a soul tree elsewhere. It can't be raised at all. So that's how it is. Is this being irrigated by the Soul River? For a moment, Chu Feng felt a bit nauseous. The birth of this fruit really wasn't that holy. He always felt that the river wasn't clean enough. In particular, he was a bit worried. Could it be that he had been contaminated by the strangeness? "Do you have any abnormalities?" Chu Feng asked Ziluan. "No, everything's great. My soul light has increased by a large margin. I feel that restoring the strength of the cosmic realm is just around the corner." "That's good." Chu Feng nodded, completely ignoring the fact that she was a universe-level expert. During this process, he refined the second fruit and his soul force increased again. He actually hadn't reached the stage where the so-called medicinal effect lost its effect. This soul fruit was a bit heaven-defying. The soul light left his body and transformed into an exceptional sword light. Cut through everything and swept in all directions. The void collapsed and the blue dome of heaven was pierced full of holes. The distant island rumbled and was annihilated before vanishing. The effect is too strong. My soul light is a wonderful technique of its own. I haven't even found a secret technique to practice. Chu Feng was a bit astonished himself and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. His eyes burned with passion. There were still over 20 soul fruit. If they were still effective for him, then to what extent could his soul light be strengthened? He even thought of all kinds of secret techniques to train his soul light. I don't care for ordinary secret techniques. Perhaps I can try to evolve the wonderful 8 treasures technique. That's right. He wanted to add the soul matter element in addition to the yin, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and sun. If he succeeded, it wouldn't be the wonderful 7 treasures technique anymore. Bang! Chu Feng opened up the path with his soul light. The resplendent sword light split the earth and revealed everything under the island. He heaved a sigh of relief after seeing the truth. What flowed through the grid-like tunnel wasn't a soul river, but refined soul matter. Moreover, there was the densest essence of extreme yang underground. There was an innate essence of extreme yang that could burn a celestial venerable to death, which further refined the soul matter. After that, it was purified by the soul tree and formed fruit. At present, it seemed to have nothing to do with strangeness and didn't involve pollution. So what if there's strangeness and inauspiciousness? It's not like I haven't experienced it before. I'm no longer tormented by the gray fog back then. Now you're just my nourishment. Chu Feng was fearless. The small millstone in his body revolved and rumbled as it crushed his soul light and refined it. This thing innately restrained inauspicious matter. He didn't discover any abnormalities, which meant that there were no problems with the soul fruit. Roar! Suddenly, a roar came from underground. An underground palace appeared beside the grid-like tunnel that was connected to the Soul River. After that, the main door collapsed. In a split second, yin qi overflowed into the sky. Large amounts of rotting corpses, skeletal remains, and all kinds of dark creatures surged out like a tide. All of them were very powerful. This astonished Chu Feng. They had the aura of the Soul River. These were the creatures that had truly come out from the Soul River. Many of them were formed from soul light. Celestial venerable. Ziluan's face was deathly pale. If it wasn't for Chu Feng being by her side, she would have long since fallen limp from the shock. Even Chu Feng's expression was solemn. Some of these rotting corpses and soul lights were at the celestial venerable level. Kill! Chu Feng coldly rebuked. The soul light between his brows surged and transformed into a glaring soul sword. It was extremely resplendent and swept over. The sound of the soul light being annihilated could be heard. After the soul light that left his body turned into sword qi, it was invincible. It was the nemesis of these dark creatures, and all of them were wiped out. In the next moment, the rotting corpses surged like a tide. Large amounts of dark creatures appeared again, as well as several celestial venerable level skeletal remains. In the end, a splendor flashed between Chu Feng's brows. Sword light surged, resplendent and intimidating. It flattened that place and blasted the underground palace apart with a boom. For a moment, sword qi crisscrossed and surged underground. Chu Feng slashed dozens of times and razed that place to the ground. All of the strange creatures scattered and were completely annihilated. So strong! Ziluan's eyes were full of little stars. She couldn't help but exclaim, "I pray that you can definitely survive in the Yang realm and endure until a martial emperor passes away in meditation." Chu Feng found it pleasing to his ears. He was just about to reveal a smile to express his confidence. In the end, he heard her mutter again. "In this way, I can use your name to create chaos. Chu Jianxiang, you mustn't die prematurely. Otherwise, I'll have to find another family." Bang! This time, all 5 of Chu Feng's fingers smashed onto her head, causing her to lose control of her tear duct. She cried loudly, and tears fell like rain. She couldn't bear the pain. Let's go. Chu Feng took Ziluan and left this place. There was no need to stay for long. Along the way, he swept through a few more islands. Unfortunately, there wasn't much value. All of the great medicines were concentrated on the first 2 islands. Where to? Ziluan asked. After wiping away her tears, her large eyes were sparkling. She had a feeling that the human traffickers were up to no good and wanted to stir up a huge storm. Chu Feng said, I'm going to the extreme north to dig into the martial madman's lair. Now, all the powerhouses under him have run to the Yin province to wait. It can be said that they're all gone. I'll go to the emperor's lair and clean it up for the empty nest old man. Damn, are you crazy? Ziluan cried out in alarm. She didn't want to be so crazy. Wasn't this courting death? The courageous will be stuffed to death, the cowardly will starve to death. Always following behind that black light, you can only drink soup. I'm going to patronize them first. I've even dug out the mouse hole in the martial madman's lair. There's nothing left. Chu Feng will never fall behind. Chu Feng constructed a domain along the way and headed north. Ziluan's face was green. She kept shouting for help. I'm going to get off. At this time, at the end of the Spirit River, in the world behind the door, a storm of blood had passed. The man in the black light had started a massacre and was charging forward. At first, the world behind the door was very vast. It was like a new world full of mist and boundless. Along the way, there were dilapidated spiritual mountains, dilapidated copper palaces, and giant stone pillars. It was like a world of ruins. Many corpses were hung on the stone pillars and within the copper palaces. It was a terrifying scene. There weren't many creatures who were truly conscious and attacking the man in the black light. Countless years ago, an earth-shattering battle had erupted here and destroyed too many things. As they went deeper, the entire world seemed to have shrunk and become shorter. It went from a boundless world to a catacomb. It was very odd and abrupt. Just a moment ago, the world was boundless, but the next moment, he had entered the catacomb world. The man in the black light walked forward with firm step. He carried a coffin in one hand and a bell in the other. He didn't say anything when he encountered obstructors. He would fight them without stopping until they exploded. He was bathed in ominous blood as he passed through the strange mist and followed the Spirit River behind the door. He wanted to see the end. Halt! Someone sighed. There was a crudely constructed stone palace on the shore in front of the catacomb. It seemed to have been casually built by amateurs. There was an old Buddhist race creature sitting cross-legged in the stone palace. Although he was only a skeleton with barely any flesh left, he was glowing with golden light as though a Buddhist nation had enveloped this place. The fallen Buddhist race? The man in the black light didn't stop and continued to walk forward. He even raised the bronze coffin and prepared to kill him. The old Buddhist said, "You can't go any further." Back then, 3 celestial emperors destroyed this place, and the Spirit River almost dried up. However, this also angered several indescribable existences in the depths of the vile earth. An indescribable battle erupted here, and it was related to the continuation of the myriad worlds. It was too bitter and caused this place to gradually change over the years. You can't go any further. I have good intentions and once belonged to the world of the living. Although I've been polluted, I haven't completely lost my original heart. I think it's the creatures in the vile earth who can't sit still anymore. They're afraid that I'll flatten this place and allow you, the fallen Buddhist race, to deceive me. As he spoke, the man in the black light closed in again and attacked. The bell vibrated, and with a hong sound, bell waves swept forward. Even though the old monk was very strong, half of his body was still blasted apart, and the stone palace also exploded. At this time, a white light flashed. A white crow flew over from the depths of the catacomb along the Spirit River and appeared here. Perhaps, to be more precise, it could be called a white crow. Its energy was very heavy. Although its entire body was snow white, there was no holy aura at all. Its pupils were red like blood, and reflected the scene of the falling heavens and gradually being destroyed. Young man, it's better for you to stop. There are some old matters that can't be mentioned again, and some old paths can't be walked anymore. The place ahead has been sealed for a long time. If you step forward, something will happen, regardless of whether it's your side or the side in the depths of the Spirit River. Neither side is willing to see it. Damned crow, are you threatening me? The man in the black light was incomparably unyielding, and had no intention of stopping at all. He still walked forward with large strides and said, "In my opinion, the so-called last pass wasn't destroyed back then, was most likely a rumor. In fact, this place has already been dug through, right? Are there only a few big and small cats left? Today, I'm going to overturn it again." The white crow sighed and said, "Be careful with your words." In the end, he thought about it and said, "Stop. This is good for both sides. Otherwise, the falling of the heavens will begin and everything will start because of you. When that really happens, no one will be able to stop the supreme existence at the end of the Spirit River, wretched earth, because the people from back then are no longer here. Damned duck, you're all going to die soon, right?" The man in the black light strode forward. On the other side, the strange and sinister white crow's expression froze for a rare moment. He had an urge to curse. Where did this young brat come from? He was boundlessly arrogant, and his words were not pleasing to the ears. What did he mean by a damned duck being stubborn? "How can you stop?" the white crow emphasized. He just didn't want to see the falling of the heavens, the blood of all worlds, and the complete collapse of all heaven and earth. The man in the black light looked down and saw a dull peach blossom in the palm of his right hand. He knew that he couldn't save it in the end. However, he still couldn't help but want to try, even if it was just a memory. Then, he opened his mouth and directly stated his conditions. "Give me 100 reincarnation talismans." On the other side, the white crow was petrified. "How many?" He suspected that he didn't hear clearly. "Damned duck, are you old? Can't you hear me clearly?" 100. The man in the black light shouted. The white crow was so angry that he wanted to turn hostile. First, it was because the other party had called him that. Throughout the ages, how many people in all the worlds had dared to speak to him like that? In addition, it was because the man in the black light was too unreasonable. How many talismans did he want? 100. Was he trying to make a deal that would last for eternity? Right, I want talismans related to the one who ruled the eons, ancestral talismans that can be used on the main path of reincarnation. I don't want the ones you made yourself, they're too dirty. The man in the black light added. F***ck. Although the white crow was extremely fierce, he really couldn't hold it in any more. He had the urge to curse. "Who do you want?" "And you want 100. Chapter 1465. Chu Feng went all the way north, crossing hundreds of provinces and occasionally passing through special chaotic realms before finally arriving at the northernmost area of the Yang realm. This place was too special. Even if the martial madman wasn't in seclusion, it was still a place that no one dared to approach. At first, it was still fine as there were people on the ground, but after crossing a bloody mountain ridge, it was completely different. The whole world suddenly became quiet. It was like a land of death. There was no sound, no living creatures, and the whole world was silent. There was only a murderous aura left in the world, as if all living things had died. After the bloody mountain ridge, the land was also red. According to legend, this was dyed red by the blood of supreme beings. An ultimate war had taken place here. The martial madman's sect was rather mysterious and complicated. It was said that they rose inexplicably from this land of death, and became the most terrifying ultimate orthodoxy in the north. Some said that the ancestor of this lineage had awakened in this bloody land of silence, and had an unfathomable origin. There were also rumors that the ancestor of this lineage was suspected to be a creature that crawled out of the Celestial Emperor's burial pit and fell into the northernmost area of the Yang realm. That was why he dyed the mountains and rivers red, turning the vast territory full of vitality into a silent land of death. In any case, this place was extremely mysterious and strange. I've finally set foot on this land. The northernmost area was very demonic and terrifying. Chu Feng felt a very unusual aura. There were still people on this side of the mountain ridge, but after crossing it, it was as if he had stepped into the underworld and arrived at the cold underworld. Of course, there were also people who said that this might be caused by the martial monarch's seclusion. From prehistoric times until now, he had absorbed too much vitality, causing this place to change. In fact, some of the martial monarch's disciples and followers were summoned here after he revived in this world. Without a sound, Chu Feng took a step forward and the mountains and rivers turned upside down. It was as if he had shrunk the earth into inches, and a vast land appeared behind him. His speed was too fast. "I can't get out of the car." Ziluan was about to cry. She felt that there was nothing left to live for. In her opinion, the human trafficker had gone mad. "What were you doing? The martial monarch's lineage was looking for your whereabouts all over the world to harvest you. But you came here on your own. What if you ran into an old monster, an almighty being, or the martial monarch? That scene would be too tragic. Perhaps, at that time, he wouldn't even be able to die, but he would be even more miserable." Ziluan muttered. She really wanted to cry. Chu Feng didn't dare to directly traverse the sky when he arrived at the northern land that was filled with devilish characteristics. Instead, he cautiously approached the legendary martial emperor's Dao grounds. He was scared that something unexpected would happen. After all, this bloodline was incomparably terrifying and mysterious. There were always all types of terrifying legends. If it really involved a large burial pit, it would definitely be very sinister. No one knew what the things that crawled out of it would leave behind. Even if the martial madman was not around, it was still better to be careful. Chu Feng said, "If you were a little stronger, I would have just dropped you on the way. But in your current state, any wolf god king or fox spirit that jumps out can eat you in one bite. Not even a feather will be left." Ziluan was speechless. These words were really unpleasant to hear. She wasn't considered weak now. She had advanced by leaps and bounds in the past 10 years since she came to the Yang realm. She was much stronger than before. However, when she thought of how Chu Feng could kill a celestial venerable with a raise of his hand, she indeed felt a sense of speechlessness. The Yang realm was vast and there were too many experts. There were even gods in the mountains. It was indeed full of danger for her. "All right, you can hide in the jar." Chu Feng stuffed her into the stone jar. As a result, Ziluan exploded as soon as she was thrown in. She screamed and rushed out with a blood-colored face floating behind her. "Suppress, go back!" Chu Feng shouted. This was an ominous mutation caused by him accidentally coming into contact with a trace of the great universe-level pollen in the supreme forbidden area. At that time, he resolutely cut it out of his body. He didn't throw it away but sealed it in the jar. At first, it was very dangerous, but as time passed, he was able to control it. In particular, the reincarnation soil could restrain this strange product. This blood-colored ominous product eventually became silent and hid under the reincarnation soil, no longer moving. Chu Feng had always felt that he could use it in the future, so he didn't want to give it up now. At this time, he passed through the vast blood-colored land and sensed all kinds of vitality in the extreme north. He finally found the martial madman's dojo. This place was known as a danger zone. However, there was a city on the periphery of this dojo, and there were signs of human habitation. He ignored it and quickly entered the central area of the danger zone that made people feel incomparably oppressive. "This dojo is a bit desolate." Chu Feng was deeply surprised. Of course, the suffocating feeling that made his body tense was also very strong. This place was extremely dangerous. In front of him was the martial emperor's dojo, which had been regarded as a death zone since prehistoric times. In the past, not many people knew about this place. It was only after the revival of the martial emperor that this place became known throughout the world. It was barren, without vegetation or rivers. There were rocks and barren land everywhere. It could be called a barren land. However, after walking for a while, he suddenly revealed a look of surprise. The barren land that didn't look like much and the mountainous area that didn't have the aura of a dojo suddenly made people feel like their bodies were about to explode and their hair stood on end. In front of him, there was a dilapidated signboard made of bronze. It was green and rusty, and it was propped up on the ground, leaning against a large green rock. There were 3 big words written on it: Southern Heavenly Gate. They were too arrogant. They actually dared to write like this. This was the so-called Southern Heavenly Gate. Didn't that mean that the depths of the dojo was the dwelling place of the Yang Realm Lord? Chu Feng looked at it again and again. Although the words were very old, he did recognize them. They belonged to the Yang Realm. It shouldn't have been dug out from under the famous mountains and rivers. It should have been written by the martial madman's lineage. However, it's a bit old. Could it have been written by the founder of the sect? Standing here made people feel uncomfortable, as if they were being pricked by needles. Even ordinary heavenly venerables couldn't stand it. Chu Feng ignored it. He used his domain technique to detect a safe path and walked toward the depths of this land without anyone noticing. Overall, it was quite smooth and he didn't encounter any obstacles. The main reason was that the martial madman's dojo was too vast. Coupled with his fame, no one in the world dared to set foot here and offend the martial emperor. Therefore, the lineage didn't pay much attention to the outer regions. They weren't worried that someone would dare to court death. Before long, Chu Feng saw creatures. This area was still very dangerous. There were mad beasts roaring on the empty blood-colored land ahead. This made him reveal a solemn expression. Those ancient beasts had broken skulls, and their bodies emitted a rancid odor as they ran on the blood-colored plain. There were divine kings and heavenly venerables. There was also a corpse that was suspected to be an almighty being refined into a puppet. It wandered here and patrolled the dojo. Chu Feng didn't provoke it. He used his heavenly master-level domain technique and passed through this area without attracting anyone's attention. At this time, he truly entered an important area. There was a rich vitality in this area. There were many cave dwellings and palaces floating in the air. Some of the martial madman's disciples and grand disciples lived here. Is this considered courting death? I'm about to enter the main lair of the empty nest, old master. Chu Feng muttered to himself. He had long since covered his entire body with reincarnation soil, not a single wisp of aura could be seen. He still had a certain level of confidence. According to Old Gu, his big brother Li Su had once searched all over the world for soul flesh, and it was precisely this reincarnation soil. One could easily imagine how rare and useful this thing was. Chu Feng still hadn't completely understood its functions, but it could conceal heaven's secrets and seal one's body and Tao marks. This was a supreme ability. Without a sound, Chu Feng sank into the ground and floated into the depths of the dojo along the earth veins like a ghost. Is this orthodoxy so fearless? Chu Feng was astonished. The martial emperor dojo had domains and death zones, but it wasn't as unapproachable as he had imagined. That's right. If it becomes a hellish place, his disciples and grand disciples won't be able to survive here. He gradually felt relieved after observing the trajectory of the earth veins. In truth, the martial emperor's lineage was powerful because of its people and not the terrain. This sect had always been tyrannical. Every time they appeared, they would conquer the world and slaughter sections. What they believed in was offense. They never cared too much about letting go because they believed that offense was the strongest defense in the world. Moreover, as long as the martial emperor was alive, he could suppress the world. How many people would dare to come here and cause trouble? If someone really did come, the so-called killing domains wouldn't be able to stop them. For example, the prehistoric evil hand Li Su. Especially when Li Su died in prehistoric times, this sect became even more terrifying. Since then, they had become unbridled and would frequently massacre immortal inheritances. For example, the incomparably powerful ancient dream path from prehistoric times was defeated by them and massacred completely. Almost no one from the sect escaped. The ancient dream path was the source of the lesser netherworld and damning Pure Land. It was also the sect of the most beautiful woman in the world, Fairy Qingshi, in her previous life. This orthodoxy was known as one of the most powerful inheritances in the world and had grasped one of the 10 great prehistoric breathing techniques. In the end, it was still destroyed. Of course, this was also related to the sect's founder, Nirvana, who had stepped onto the path of reincarnation. Although the sect's founder returned from the path of reincarnation in the end, it could be said that he went against the heavens and displayed supreme divine abilities in order to save the ancient dream path. But in the end, the martial madman personally took action and attacked crazily, and still managed to kill the Mongolian Tao patriarch. The ancient dream path that possessed one of the 10 great prehistoric breathing techniques was destroyed and removed from the world of the living. This was indeed a great massacre that shocked the ages. The martial madman's madness, tyranny, and blood-stained hands were vividly and incisively displayed back then. No one could stop him. And this was only one of his accomplishments. There were others. The martial emperor's bloodline ran amok in the world and destroyed countless orthodoxies. If it wasn't for the martial madman suddenly going into seclusion and going silent for thousands of years, who knew how many bloody massacres would have happened? After Chu Feng came to the world of the living, he had gone to the ancient dream path with old Gu and personally witnessed some of the marks of the past. Speaking of which, the martial madman's line destroyed the orthodoxy of my child's mother's previous life. This time I'm here to help reap some of the interest? Of course, he had long since understood that the current Qin Luoyin had already awakened Fairy Qingshi's memories, and was no longer completely her. It would be difficult for them to cross paths again. Chu Feng was like a specter as he silently wandered around this vast Dao field. This place was really too big. Some places were bare, and some places were so dense with immortal qi that it couldn't be dispersed. The place was exuberant with vitality. You guys are tyrannical and insolent. This is good. You guys believe in using offense as defense. Today, it's actually convenient for me to visit. Chu Feng avoided some places that made people shudder. Even if the martial madman wasn't here, this place was still extremely dangerous under the circumstances where all of his personal disciples were present. For example, near a certain cold pond, there was actually a skeleton of a powerhouse that was full of holes. This was the result of the black mist that came out from there corroding the flesh and blood, and even the bones were about to disintegrate. There was also a medicinal field where there was an ancient beast of a shockingly high level. Although it looked muddle-headed, it was definitely a top-notch powerhouse among the powerhouses. That medicinal field contained intense radiation energy. To many people, it was a fatal source of pollution. Of course, to creatures that could withstand its medicinal properties, it was a pure land, a celestial herb garden. Even that powerhouse ancient beast was in a muddle-headed state from the radiation. One could see how shocking and terrifying it was. Chu Feng's eyes were green as he stared at the medicinal field. He looked at it again and again, but in the end, he didn't make a move. He had a feeling that this was an experimental field, and it wasn't just because of the radiation from the ultimate medicinal herbs. He believed that it was most likely related to the scattering of some strange substances by humans in an attempt to cultivate new varieties and mutate invincible medicinal herbs. He had once heard that some ultimate life forms were very bold. In order to achieve breakthroughs, They would occasionally use strange and inauspicious substances to water the medicinal herbs and observe them. Chu Feng suspected that it was most likely the martial madman's personal disciples who helped him experiment. Should I directly attack the emperor's lair? He wanted to go to the martial madman's place of seclusion. That place was most likely to have supreme martial scriptures, and perhaps even the art of time. It was definitely a heaven-defying place. Ever since he entered, he already knew where that place was. Because the radiation was too severe, it was different from the others. Moreover, it was a stretch of darkness like a heavenly abyss. Volcanoes, snowy plains, and everything else could be found in that land of darkness. All kinds of extreme terrains were combined together. In the deepest part, it was impossible to see through. There was only darkness and fatal radiation that was so dense that even almighty figures couldn't withstand it. It's too dangerous. Chu Feng sighed. However, he didn't give up. He concealed his tracks and cautiously approached that area. At the same time, he was also exploring, hoping to find the great medicinal field of this ultimate dojo. That place is a little different. It's actually on par with the martial madman's place of seclusion, and it's much higher than the other places. After approaching the dark area, Chu Feng endured the intense radiation and saw something strange on the other side. It was a quiet land with dead silence. He could even vaguely see that the terrain there was higher than the martial madman's place of seclusion. Of course, he couldn't see the depths of the darkness where the martial madman was. The most surprising thing was that, from the layout, it looked like a place of pilgrimage. It was an extraordinary place. Chu Feng approached it. It was an island in the sea of magma. It was very strange. Even though the scarlet magma sea had yet to solidify and was undulating, it was also silent, making this place seem exceptionally quiet. It's not simple. From a distance, people would ignore the magma and only see the island. But when they got closer, they would quickly ignore the island and only stare at the stone temple on the island. When Chu Feng landed on the island, he felt an abnormality. There were traces of radiation left behind from ancient times, and some of it still existed. In an instant, his expression froze. Why did he feel that this residual radiation wasn't simple? Even after so many years, people could still sense its shocking level. The creature that left behind the radiation might not be weaker than the martial madman at its peak. This was what Chu Feng felt. This place was too evil. Everything went smoothly. There were no other obstacles apart from the residual radiation. Moreover, he had the reincarnation soil on him. After this exhaustion, only traces of radiation were left, which wouldn't harm him. There wasn't a single person guarding here. The island wasn't big, and it was as quiet as an ancient painting. After landing on the island, Chu Feng approached the stone temple and circled around it. In the end, he was instantly stunned. There was a dilapidated garden behind the stone temple. It seemed to be a medicinal field that had been left behind from countless years ago and lacked management. There were some decaying medicinal plants and ancient trees there, as well as intense radiation. This is a good place. Chu Feng guessed that this might be an ultimate medicinal field that had been abandoned and hadn't been taken care of for many years. However, it was definitely of great use to him. He was almost drooling. However, he didn't know whether he could successfully excavate it. After all, once it was contaminated with the word ultimate, it would be something terrifying. The radiation was fatal. The relatively desolate medicinal field was faintly glowing. There was a faint medicinal fragrance amidst the decaying medicinal plant. What did he see? A fruit was half hidden under the plants that lacked vitality. An invincible fruit, an ultimate fruit? Chu Feng guessed. However, he didn't act blindly without thinking. An abandoned ultimate medicinal field might not be that simple. Subsequently, he turned to the main entrance of the stone temple. Through the half-open stone door, he saw the scenery inside. In the magnificent stone temple, there was only a sacrificial altar. There were no other decorations in the temple. This palace was only used to shelter the altar from the wind and rain, and to block the dust and sand. There was something on the altar, a skeleton. It had some humanoid characteristics, but there were many obvious differences. For example, there were wing bones and a hole in the forehead, which should be left by a vertical eye. The skeleton was snow-white but lusterless. There was no radiation or energy fluctuation, but it was placed on the altar. What kind of creature is this? What is its origin? The temple it is in is comparable to the martial madman's seclusion ground. It's definitely extraordinary. However, no matter how Chu Feng looked at it, the skeleton was too ordinary. Why was it placed on the altar? Who was it sacrificed to? Or could it be that this isn't an altar, but rather an ancestral altar, and that this bone is being worshipped? Chu Feng had a feeling that this skeleton was extraordinary. He decided to find a way to get it away and try to refine it into a weapon. He even made a connection. Could it be an elder of the martial madman sect? But why was there no danger? It felt like it had been reduced to an ordinary bone. If it really is an ultimate bone, I must refine it into a weapon. No, in order to avenge the ancient dream path, I should take a few bones and feed them to the beasts. However, what kind of ferocious beast could bite an extreme bone? Chu Feng was thinking of all kinds of messy ideas. For a moment, he thought of the big black dog. If he fed the bones of an ultimate creature to the dog, would it eat it? Probably only it could bite it. Of course, this was all a whim. He did not really want to do it, but just thought about it. However, there was a giant beast in the sky that was suspicious and restless, because it had an inexplicable feeling. Damn it! In the void of an unknown heaven far away, a big black dog muttered to itself with a gloomy face, "Recently, there have been people talking about me, disturbing my peace." It naturally thought of Li Su, who had mentioned it not long ago, saying that it had been attacked by a black dog, and that it had also said that it wanted to smash the heads of a group of people. At that time, it really wanted to go down and bite those people to death. They were not good people. At this time, it sensed something again. Someone was definitely talking about it. Let me pull the karmic threads. Let's see who dares to have evil thoughts about me. I'll kill you. Although the big black dog was very old and lacked spirit, it still had a very fierce look, baring its broken teeth. Then, it put it into action. Something strange. That person's cultivation is not strong, but he has an incredible treasure on him that conceals the heavenly secrets. I can't move him through the karmic threads. The big dog looked surprised. However, at this moment Chu Feng was given a huge fright. The dog thought that it couldn't find him immediately, but the blurry figure of the big black dog had appeared in front of him, baring its broken teeth. Its ferocious aura was overflowing, and its evil aura was matchless. Chu Feng cursed. Just now, he had only muttered it in his heart, and it had really attracted this dog. What was going on? He couldn't help but mutter it, and it had come true. In reality, he didn't know that it was all Li Su's fault. When Li Blackhand was fighting the martial emperor and the others in the depths of the starry sky, he had disturbed this dog, causing it to pay attention to this world from time to time. Thus, it was relatively sensitive now. Fortunately, Chu Feng had the stone jar on him, so this dog couldn't find him now. If it wasn't for the fact that this dog had interacted with Chu Feng in the three-way battlefield back then and had left behind a backup plan, it wouldn't have appeared here. Chu Feng didn't know and thought that it had sensed it long ago. Thus, he was speechless and helpless. He said, "Could it be that you really want to descend and eat this bone? Forget it, I'll give it all to you. Feed it to the dog." He directly used domain methods to transport this skeleton, and was prepared to throw it into the big black dog's open bloody mouth. Why do I feel a bit uneasy? Is something big going to happen? Some people in the martial emperor's retreat hall were suspicious. A great heavenly venerable stood up and looked around, but in the end, he didn't see anything. However, He still felt that something was wrong. Relying on the intuition of a peerless great heavenly venerable, he finally cast his gaze toward an island in the sea of lava. Hiss! He drew in a breath of cold air. Could it be that something was going to happen there? Could it be? Then, he felt a wave of excitement. That place was incomparably sacred. For many disciples, it was a pure land, a holy land that was too high to reach. That was because there was the Tao bone of the martial emperor's master. According to legend, the martial emperor's master hadn't died and might return one day and revive once again. According to a certain theory, the essence of the martial emperor's master had left the Yang realm, but he definitely hadn't died back then. With his Tao bone as the coordinates of the Yang realm, he would return one day. Could it be that the ancestor is going to return? He was astonished. At this time, Chu Feng was also astonished because he could vaguely hear that dog cursing. It said that it had been constantly disturbed recently, and if it found out, it would definitely kill it. Just now, it actually didn't discover me? However, he had already taken action and thrown the skeleton into the dog's mouth. Now it was too late to stop. He felt as if he had made a mistake. What was feeding the dog? It seemed that he had messed up the martial emperor's pot and also provoked the big dog. He had committed a great disaster. Come back. He wanted to pull the skeleton back, but it was already impossible. Chapter 1466. Within the martial emperor Tao field, a grand emperor's hands and feet were trembling. His lips were trembling as he muttered, "The ancestor is returning?" He was simply too excited, and it could even be said that he was incomparably excited. In his opinion, there was no event more impactful than this, and he almost wanted to shout out loud. If this ancestor were to return, how strong would their lineage become? As a grand Empyrean, he was naturally an extraordinary person. He was known as an unrivaled existence within the Empyrean realm and was truly one of the leading existences within the same realm. Only a few terrifying orthodoxies in the world of the living could nurture such a terrifying evolver that was undefeatable at the same level. Ancestor, have you achieved another leap in your life and stepped onto the path of return? Are you going to become one with your Tao bone? Who in this world can be your opponent? The Grand Empyrean trembled as he spoke. His divine sense was far sharper than that of others. Currently, he was the only one who sensed that unusual fluctuation. He also had fellow apprentices, and there were a few of them by his side. Under the situation where all the powerful existences were out, these people were guarding the important places with him. Everyone present heard his words and guessed what had happened. What? The ancestor has returned? What are you talking about? Which ancestor? Could it be the martial emperor's teacher? In an instant, this place erupted. However, they didn't dare to make a ruckus. They all widened their eyes and let out suppressed roars. They did their best to restrain their emotions. This was simply too shocking. That person had been silent for almost an era, yet he was still able to revive and return from the outer realm. This was simply unimaginable. Just how powerful was he? One had to know that back then, he took that step in order to ascend to the extreme. It was said that there was a slim chance of survival, and the peerless experts believed that his name had been erased from this world. That was because after he took that step, he would be considered to have entered eternal silence. It was no different from death. Since ancient times, no one had ever seen anyone who could revive or come back to life. This was a dead end. Only those who couldn't see hope and had no other choice would take that step. Haha, some people were so excited that they wanted to laugh at the sky, but they did their best to hold it in, afraid that they would disturb the ancestors' return. The creatures in this Tao rite were all alarmed. They all knew what was going on. The teacher of a martial emperor, a legendary existence, was going to return from that mysterious place? Most of the people here were evolvers of the middle to high levels, and they were all life forms at or above the divine level. Therefore, their actions were very fast, and they started to set up tables, burn incense, and pray solemnly. There were even people who poured water on the pure land and built 7-colored altars. The so-called splashing of water was divine liquid. The instant it landed on the ground, golden multicolored light surged, lotus flowers appearing in the void, auspicious and holy. They quickly made preparations, arranging jade tables, bronze furnaces, jade cauldrons and other things, lining up all around that island. Smoke rose in spirals, resonating with the Tao. A group of people knelt down and waited for the patriarch to come out of seclusion. This sort of ceremony was very solemn and sacred. All the living beings within the martial Emperor Tao grounds that possessed a certain level of status had come, knelt on the ground, and prayed in a low voice. The moment to witness a miracle is here. The patriarch has returned, looking down on the heavens above and earth below, unrivaled throughout the ages. Who can contend against him? The group of people were excited, and they roared in a low voice. The moment to witness an unmatched legend was about to arrive. From great heavenly deities to divine-level creatures, there wasn't a single one who wasn't excited. Their bloodline was destined to rise up and achieve unmatched greatness. They were going to become the supreme overlords of this world, ruling over the world. The fluctuations are becoming more intense. The patriarch has already set up the coordinate. I can even feel that the patriarch's Tao bones are trembling slightly, merging with the great Tao to guide his true body back. Great heavenly deity spoke with a face full of reverence. He kowtowed several times, paying his respects to the patriarch. Only his divine senses were the most powerful and especially sharp, able to sense a few special fluctuations. Meanwhile, the others still couldn't. After all, that island was extremely special, hidden in a sea of magma. In addition, there was a stone palace suppressing it, not leaking out its aura. Even Chu Feng didn't make any special discoveries before he landed on the island. Only when he got closer did he notice the altar and skeletal remains. Sacred ancestor, 10,000 years without limit, one life for a great era. Someone shouted. Don't make a ruckus, wait respectfully. Someone berated. The group of people felt reverence and worship, waiting for the unmatched prehistoric patriarch to descend. They wanted to personally witness the moment of a miracle. On the island, in the stone palace, Chu Feng had a strange expression on his face. He heard the noises outside, and his eyes turned green. He really didn't expect the skeleton's origin to be so great. The martial madman's master? It really was true. Before this, he only had a rough guess, but he didn't have any evidence, so he couldn't be sure. Now everything was confirmed. He had fed the martial madman's master to a dog. Meanwhile, the group of people outside were still cheering in excitement. They were still looking forward to the sacred moment of the patriarch's return. If they knew what was happening now, if they saw a dog gnawing on the Tao bones and cursing, what kind of expression would they have? Would they explode on the spot? In the stone palace, above the altar, the blurry shadow of a black beast was really huge. It slowly approached, and a white skeleton fell from its bloody mouth. The giant beast didn't descend in one step, but rather, it explored and gradually took shape. In fact, during this process, Chu Feng was still trying to salvage the situation. He wanted to get the skeleton back. After all, it was now confirmed that this was the martial madman's master. If this were to be exposed, not only the group of people outside would explode, even the martial madman would probably explode from anger. However, Chu Feng failed. Ever since he threw it out, the bloody mouth was like a black hole, dragging the Tao bones down slowly. It was impossible to snatch it back. One had to know that he had just thrown it out. Chu Feng was so angry that he wanted to curse. Throwing meat buns at a dog, things that entered the dog's mouth were really gone for good. He really wanted to keep the peace and not cause too much of a commotion. He didn't want to fight to the death with the martial madman just yet. Besides, he came here to empty the nest of the ultimate nests of the nest and seize all kinds of fortunes, but in the end, what the hell was this? I've tried my best, he said with a righteous expression, indicating that this matter had nothing to do with him. In the outer realm, in an unknown layer of heaven, the giant black beast opened its bloody mouth and bared its incomplete canine teeth. It said fiercely, "You still dare to fight with me? Do you still think you can escape after falling into this emperor's mouth? I've never heard of anything that can escape after being bitten by this emperor." It naturally felt a resistance. The prey wanted to break free, but with its prestige, who in the world didn't know about it? Its ferocious name shook the world. To the experts, it was like thunder piercing through the ears. Its name had shaken the past and present. "Now that you've fallen into my mouth, you can just stay there obediently," it shouted arrogantly in a certain layer of heaven. It thought that it had bitten the offender. The reason why it was so strenuous was that it was too far away from the world of the living. In addition, it was old and its blood energy was almost dried up. It had been injured badly in the battle in the past, and there was a certain period of time when it was almost at the end of its life. Of course, the most important point was that it was being chanted by people and had split into many illusory bodies to explore in all directions. It drew out a strand of karma from Chu Feng's side, but it was just a void image. Its power was too scattered and its form was indistinct. However, now, it closed its mouth and bit down on its prey. This was still because it was too far away and the void image was too indistinct. Even now, it still didn't know what its prey was. Otherwise, it would have long vomited. It was because it never ate human flesh. This was its rule as well as its bottom line. Ever since it was young, the unmatched experts it had followed were all humans. Chu Feng felt his teeth ache from watching. That large mouth was biting down on the Dao bone, producing great Dao sparks and crunching sounds. Even he felt a toothache when he saw it. How can this be endured? He could imagine those scenes. Regardless of whether it was the martial emperor or this large dog, after learning the truth, they would both feel as if their internal organs were on fire and they would fly into a rage, right? Perhaps even this was being said lightly. He didn't care about these things anymore. He was always prepared. As long as there was great chaos, he would take action and sweep through the martial emperor Dao right. What scripture storage pavilion? What medicinal field? As long as he could move it, he would move it away. In any case, this group of people were gathered outside the island, and those places just happened to be empty. This was a heaven-sent opportunity that wouldn't alarm anyone. The patriarch has returned unmatched since ancient times. He has successfully taken that step, opening up an unprecedented situation, breaking through the ultimate path, and developing an even more powerful supreme Tao. When one reached Chu Feng's level of strength, his five senses were naturally ridiculously strong. How could that group of people hide from his spiritual perception when they were so stirred up and excited? At this time, even he felt a bit embarrassed. The group of people outside was boiling with excitement. They were too high profile, even starting to shout slogans. It was because everyone could feel that there was indeed a supreme expert descending, returning, currently becoming one with the patriarch's Dao bone. Now, their cheers wouldn't affect the patriarch. Chu Feng was speechless. How was he going to wrap things up now? He was worried for those people. At the same time, his expression was a bit unnatural, a rare blush appearing on his face. I really didn't do it on purpose. Who knew that when I was thinking about that dog, it would come true? Without a sound, he left the hall and began to dig. The medicine field behind the stone hall was very strange. It was very quiet and all the herbs had withered. However, this place was obviously very ordinary. Almost instantly, Chu Feng shivered. It was too inauspicious, too terrifying. This soil had a big problem. He directly threw everything away. His fiery eyes shot out explosively as he stared at the medicine field. The radiation was still very terrifying, but this wasn't the main point. The danger came from some fine particles in the soil that had condensed with the soil. Pollen. Even though the plants had rotted and withered, the pollen they left behind was still there. It hadn't been destroyed, and it hadn't rotted away. It was too inauspicious, and it gave people an extremely dangerous feeling. It was as if a disaster was imminent. The pollen in the soil wasn't something good. The entire medicine field has been contaminated? Chu Feng said coldly. Or could it be that this was actually a great universe-level pollen that represented inauspiciousness? At this stage, Chu Feng didn't want to come into contact with such things. I don't care what you are. Grandpa Chu never leaves empty-handed. Since I've come, I naturally have to reap some harvest. He used the top methods of his domain and plucked the fruit hidden under the rotting plants without touching any of the pollen. A great universe-level fruit? Chu Feng didn't know. Or perhaps it was some kind of indestructible fruit that could temper the body and spirit. He wasn't sure and couldn't be sure. This fruit was as round and smooth as an immortal pill. It was a deep blue color, sparkling and translucent, and its fragrance assailed the nostrils. The strong fragrance almost made one's soul leave their body. It was very special. Bang! Chu Feng directly sealed it in a jade box. Of course, there was a lot of reincarnation soil in the box. This was the main material used to seal this fruit. It's about time. In a while there will be chaos. I'll go harvest everywhere. Whatever scriptures and great medicines, don't let me see them. Otherwise they'll all be surnamed Chu. Boom. At this time, the black dog's body had more or less condensed. It held the Dao bone in its mouth and broke through the stone hall as it slowly floated into the air. Outside the island, there was a dense mass of evolved beings kneeling on the ground in worship. They were all dumbfounded. Even someone as powerful as the great heavenly venerables couldn't believe their eyes. What were they seeing? A large black dog with a square head, large ears, large eyes, and monstrous killing intent was biting their ancestors' Dao bone as it slowly flew into the sky. Stop! Shut up! Let go of the ancestor! Let go! Outside the island, the group of people on the lava shore was about to explode. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. After a short period of silence, they began to shout and roar continuously. The great heavenly venerables trembled once again. The others were also trembling and their lips were trembling. However, this time, it wasn't out of excitement but out of anger. How could they accept this? Unbelievable! What happened to the ancestor's return? What happened to his invincible appearance? How could he become a dog's dog food? Who is it? Where did this peerless demon come from? It actually dared to eat the ancestor. While the group of people were furious, they were also terrified. This was definitely an extraordinary creature. Otherwise, how could it dare to be so impudent? Since ancient times, how many people dared to cause trouble at the martial emperor's Dao rite? Chu Feng was also grinning. This matter had indeed gotten out of hand. However, he wouldn't care. He turned around and left, disappearing without a trace during the chaos. He went to the scripture pavilion, to the medicine fields, to loot, no, to purchase. I will be open and above board, he said to himself in a righteous manner. He ran away, and this ancestor island was in chaos. Dog demon, let go of the ancestor. Ancestor, you are so pitiful. Where are you? Hurry up and return, revive. Someone is eating your Dao bone. Martial Emperor above, Supreme One, hurry up and return. Someone is causing trouble in the Dao rite. There's a dog, it's gone mad. This place was in chaos. Even though everyone was terrified of this dog, and felt that it was unfathomable, there were still some who didn't fear death. They roared loudly and called out to the ancestor. There were even some who wanted to rush over and stop everything. They wanted to save the ancestor's only physical Dao bone left in this world. In the boundlessly distant outer realm, the large black dog bared its broken teeth. Its gaze was extremely unkind. It sensed something again. There were many people brazenly showing malicious intent towards it. They were very unkind, and they were near that illusory body of his. It focused its projection and split out more of its attention. Instantly it heard many voices. What dog demon? Feeding the dog? Dog food? The dog has already gone mad. After hearing these words, its large black face instantly darkened. Who the F***ck is crazy? It's you guys who have gone mad, right? How dare you blaspheme me like this? I'll bite you guys to death. It roared loudly. Then, because it was paying extra attention, and its illusory body became more and more solid, it finally sensed clearly and thoroughly. What was that thing in its mouth? Woof! With a loud roar, it was so angry that white smoke came out of its mouth and nose. What the hell was that in its mouth? A humanoid skeleton with wings? It was too disgusting. Ugh! The large black dog vomited. If this was a living person, then so be it. After all, it had bitten them many times in the past. Even before the Celestial Emperor had matured, he would often chase after and bite him. Even now, when he mentioned it, its domineering aura soared into the heavens. But what was this thing in front of its eyes? It was a dead person's bone. It felt that its taste wasn't that heavy. Ancestral Master has fallen. Ancestral Master has fallen. A group of people cried out in alarm, and were about to rush over to catch it. After the large black dog vomited a few times, its large eyes widened. The more it thought about it, the more uncomfortable it felt. It bared its teeth and said, "Things that have fallen into my hands haven't been released yet. So what if it's a dead person's bone? I'll take it away all the same." Because it could feel that this was a Taoist bone, and its quality was still passable. It was extremely weak now, so perhaps it could take it away and use it as firewood, using the energy symbols of the great Tao to nourish the old Emperor's body. Things are different now. I'll just make do with it. Crunch! It took it away again with a single bite. Ancestral Master. I know where it came from. It's that legendary Dog Emperor. Finally, someone thought of something, and his face turned deathly pale. He vaguely understood the origins of this dog. After all, it was a member of the martial emperor's lineage, and its orthodoxy was extraordinary, far superior to other inheritances in the Yang realm. The people here understood many secrets, and knew many ancient great events that had disappeared. We must report this to the martial emperor. Someone roared in a low voice. His eyes were already wide open, and he quickly burned incense and prayed, wanting to summon the martial madman back. It's settled. Chu Feng mumbled in the distance, but he was more or less guilty. This time, it was all this dog's fault. When the time came, the commotion caused would probably not be too small. At the same time, in the world behind the door at the end of the Soul River, there were also people pondering, wanting to find someone to take the blame. Since they were going to cause a big commotion, it was naturally better to find someone to share the damage with. Achoo! Achoo! In the outer realm, there were creatures sneezing madly. Chapter 1467. The Patriarch has been taken away by a dog. A mournful scream pierced through the tranquility of the martial emperor training ground. It passed through the scarlet mountain black water and reverberated across the entire sky, disturbing the vast land of the north. Chu Feng didn't need to look to imagine how explosive the scene behind him would be. It was mainly because the martial emperor's disciples were too high profile not long ago. At that time, the martial madman's disciples were all in high spirits and full of mettle. They were just short of beating gongs and drums, singing and laughing, and celebrating with the whole world. In the end, a big black dog with almost all of its fur came out respectfully, cursing and enjoying the Patriarch's Tao bone. It was a gluttonous feast. The scene before and after was just too beautiful. This group of people was about to vomit blood. Previously, they had poured water on the street, set up incense, and knelt on the ground to worship, but this was the result? The group of disciples seemed to be suffering from red-eye disease. Their eyes were filled with blood-red light, and they all wanted to kill someone. The current scene was simply unforgivable and unacceptable. Damn it, this is blasphemy against the sacred ancestor. Stop it and leave the patriarch's bone. The patriarch was fed to a dog. Dog food? The martial madman's people were in a complete mess. They wanted nothing more than to bang their heads against the wall and die. This was a test of one's mental endurance. It was absolutely hellish and unbearable. Even powerful people like them felt like they were about to have a heart attack. Today, the patriarch was dragged away by a dog and reduced to. Was this going to become a joke for all eternity? This scene caused many people to cover their chests. Everyone was anxious. If this was spread out, how would the world view them? The patriarch was reduced to dog food? What kind of joke was this? The group of people went crazy. At this moment, Chu Feng was in a great mood. He felt extremely comfortable, as if he was about to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. He felt like he was floating. In just a moment, he had already visited a treasure vault. Apart from various weapons and mysterious treasures, he also found a piece of mother gold. It was pitch black like a huge abyss, absorbing all the light in the surroundings. This was the dark mother gold, very rare. He could fuse it into the diamond chakram later to make it stronger. Very quickly, Chu Feng stared at a door that was partially smelted with lapis lazuli. It was connected to an underground palace. He spent some effort to open it and entered in a flash. Chu Feng's eyes lit up. This was indeed a scripture depository. The bookshelves were arranged in rows, and the scriptures were piled up one after another. Some were arranged neatly, while others were scattered on the ground. It was quite messy. Randomly picking up a book, the cover wrote, "Heavenly Halberd Arts." This was a halberd technique that didn't require any weapons. It mainly focused on cultivating energy symbols, and after a bit of success, an energy heavenly halberd would appear in one's hand. It was an extremely vicious secret technique. It was not the orthodox lineage of the martial madman, so it was no wonder that it was casually placed here. Chu Feng guessed that this underground palace was where the spoils of war were kept. The various ancient books might have been obtained after the extermination of the clan. This is the 5 Elemental Divine Light? Although it can't be considered a peerless secret manual, it's not bad and has important reference value. He randomly pulled out a book from the bookshelf. It was this kind of secret manual. After rummaging around, Chu Feng had a rough idea of the value of the books here. He wasn't picky at all. He packed everything up and took them away. To Chu Feng, these were all nutrients for his evolution. They were all beneficial supplements. He needed such systematic scriptures to study after coming to the world of the living. He didn't lack ultimate technique. The robbery induction breathing technique was his foundation. However, everything had a spirit and every technique had a path. All of these could be used as a reference. Using the techniques of others as the fire to temper one's own path, one could finally step onto one's own unique path. Chu Feng had already realized this a long time ago. He began to consciously collect all kinds of ancient books. After reaching a certain level, he needed such accumulation. Even if he didn't major in it or even didn't learn it, it would be good to flip through these scriptures on a daily basis. Chu Feng's next target was a building on the ground. It was made of secret gold, and its entire body was flickering with order runes. It was obvious that this was an extraordinary place of importance. If someone hadn't left in a hurry to welcome the return of the patriarch and didn't completely close this place, Chu Feng would have to spend a lot of effort to open it. He paused for a moment and successfully barged in. This place isn't simple. Chu Feng revealed a solemn expression. The undying breathing technique was here. It was a profound and famous inheritance from the phoenix race in the world of the living. There was a simple and unadorned phoenix bone with many small words carved on it. It was also stained with dark and solidified phoenix blood. This was enough to reveal some clues. In order to obtain this breathing technique in the past, there must have been all kinds of bloody scenes. When Chu Feng fought against the martial madman's faction's descendant, Li Chuntian, on the three-way battlefield, the latter had used the Phoenix race's secret technique. At that time, someone said that the martial emperor had personally killed over 80% of the Phoenix race's experts and seized their inheritance. Now, it was undoubtedly further confirmed. This was a good item. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call the Phoenix race's breathing technique a peerless secret scripture. He quickly studied it and couldn't help but be moved. This breathing technique could at least allow one to evolve to the almighty level. Its value was astonishing. All in all, this could be considered an incomplete technique. The Phoenix race probably had a backup plan back then and didn't allow the martial madman to obtain the scripture. While Chu Feng was reading it, the bone was flowing with fiery light and densely packed words appeared on it. The profound meanings were peerlessly profound and enlightened him greatly. For a moment, he followed the breathing technique and circulated it. His mouth and nose were full of flowing scarlet light and his whole body was covered in a fiery red color. The energy was astonishing and his spirit was also breathing along with it. Good stuff. It can strengthen my blood energy and nourish my bones. This is a cleansing of the marrow. Apart from this, there were also some secret techniques recorded behind the undying breathing technique. For example, the Phoenix dance in the 9 heavens and the undying flames. There was even a spiritual nirvana technique. Nirvana. Chu Feng was astonished. This was a very valuable technique. It could transform a person's life and even bring them back to life. Legend had it that plants could wither and then flourish, and phoenixes could be reborn after aging. This was an unparalleled secret. It only involves the spirit and doesn't have a physical nirvana technique. It seems it's not complete, but the reference value is too great. Chu Feng was very satisfied. There wasn't much to say. He had moved away all the ancient books. Just this part of the Phoenix race's inheritance was worth it, not to mention other things. He could read these scriptures often in the future and recite them day after day. It would be an unimaginably important accumulation. The martial madman is really ruthless. In order to obtain the secret scripture, he used bloody methods and almost exterminated the Phoenix race. Only a small portion of the race managed to escape overseas. Soon, he entered the next place, which was a sealed space secret realm. There were all kinds of stone tablets here, and many wondrous techniques were recorded. This was a place for the disciples to go into seclusion and comprehend technique. The stone tablets were all about comprehension, and many secret techniques and battle techniques of the martial madman's lineage were inscribed on them. "It's indeed remarkable," Chu Feng exclaimed in admiration. These records were extremely astonishing. Among them, the most valuable was the grinding plate fist. It was a secret scripture that only the martial madman's direct descendants could cultivate. Unfortunately, there was no 7 deaths method, time technique, or the martial madman's breathing technique. Presumably, those supreme inheritances weren't written in words and were bestowed in the form of imprints. This was to prevent others from stealing them and letting them flow to the outside world. Even so, this was a sumptuous feast for Chu Feng. A systematic and specific technique was better than anything else. It broadened his horizons and greatly moved him. If it wasn't for the martial madman's dojo, he would have immediately gone into seclusion. The epiphany was astonishing. His figure flickered and left the space secret realm, taking away a large number of technique. Unfortunately, he wandered around the vast area and found that there was something wrong with all the herb field. Not only did they emit strong radiation, but they were also emitting ominous auras. The martial madman has really gone mad. What kind of experiment is he doing? He's contaminated all the rare herb field. Is he trying to fuse with them on his own? Chu Feng was shocked. At the same time, he felt very helpless and regretful. These herb fields were equivalent to wastelands to him. Obviously, the martial monarch's personal disciples and the others had their own cave abodes and were growing the herbs they needed in their own herb fields. No one dared to use the herb fields here. Not long after, Chu Feng found another underground palace. This time, his heartbeat quickened and he was secretly amazed. The martial madman was too ruthless. How many experts had he killed in the past to obtain such a harvest? This place wasn't simple. It could even be said to be heaven-defying. What did he see? There weren't many secret manuals on the bookshelf, but they were all heavyweight ones. For example, the thunderous breathing technique. This thing was too famous. It was an absolute art of the Buddhist race that wasn't taught to outsiders. Chu Feng had come into contact with it a long time ago. Although the space he obtained was limited, he still benefited a lot from it. The martial madman actually managed to collect it. Without a doubt, he must have secretly attacked the Buddhist race's legendary figures. This was crazy. If this matter were to spread out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in the Yang realm. The Buddhist race was one of the top 3 races in the Yang realm. Even the martial madman didn't dare to openly challenge them. Only God knew if they had any ancient Buddhas who had survived from the previous era. The Heng race, Tao race, and Buddhist race, no one was willing to openly challenge them. The waters of these races were too deep. Peerless rulers had appeared from time to time over the years, dominating the scene for millions of years. However, they were only passers-by in the end. How many of them could survive? Only the Heng race and the Buddhist race remained. Li was extremely daring in the past. He dared to attack the old patriarch of one of the top-ranked clans in the Yang realm and pry into his technique. I didn't expect that old brat Wu to be so crazy too. Chu Feng exclaimed. He didn't realize what he was doing. He was also crazy. Close to the Grand Cosmos realm? This was the note Chu Feng saw at the back of the thunderous breathing technique. Cultivating this technique would allow one to reach the edge of the Grand Cosmos realm. It was indeed a peerless heritage. Obviously, it wasn't complete enough. There were some flaws. This was a technique related to the rise and fall of a race. It wasn't easy to obtain it. There were protective measures. However, it was enough. How many ordinary evolvers could reach the end of this technique? It was enough for them to cultivate for a few lifetimes. After the thunderous breathing technique, there was still the Vairocana fist and the worlds in the palm. It was quite complete. This was an eye-opener for Chu Feng. He liked it very much. He was on the verge of exclaiming. The martial madman was such a good person to collect such peerless arts. Young lady, she had taught him the Vairocana fist a long time ago. It was incomplete, but now it was complete. Original demon breathing technique? Not bad, it was once one of the top 10 ultimate breathing technique. Even though the demon race's influence isn't as great as before, it was still glorious in the past. There must be something unique about it. It's another peerless art. Of course, it was also incomplete, but it was close to the edge of the Grand Cosmos realm. Following this, he discovered that the breathing technique of the Dream Ancient Path was also incomplete. Back then, the martial madman shattered the Dream Ancient Path and killed the indescribable patriarch. He massacred all the disciples of the sect and shook the Yang realm. These old matters. Chu Feng shook his head and sighed. He had personally gone to this place and had some gains. He swept through the place and obtained many secret arts, the 6 Tao sword scripture, the true art of primordial chaos, the heaven's emergence movement technique, and so on. Finally, he was satisfied and prepared to run. Today's harvest was too great. Even though the several ultimate arts were incomplete, it would be enough if he could comprehend them thoroughly. Now I can be considered to have a myriad of arts. My foundation is comparable to some ancient orthodoxies. I've solved a big problem for myself. This was very important. No one could create a Tao out of thin air and write their own scriptures. All experts had to stand on the shoulders of their predecessors and comprehend their arts and Tao. Only then could they go further. Chu Feng ran away with incredible speed. The main thing was that he was about to comprehend something. His mind was filled with all kinds of arts, and runes appeared involuntarily on the surface of his body. He desperately wanted to find a place to continue comprehending. The martial madman's place of seclusion. Farewell, I won't be visiting it today. He felt a little regretful. This was the result of his efforts to restrain himself. He always felt that the place was too stifling. Even though the martial madman wasn't home, that place was still a place where one could only enter but not leave. Swoosh! He disappeared. As for the group behind him, they were still shouting to the heavens and the earth. They had all gone crazy. Chu Feng was intoxicated and began to comprehend on the way. All kinds of Tao sounds rumbled in his heart and scripture runes flowed in his blood. This was very shocking. Very soon, secret code runes were engraved on his bones, organs, skin, and even hair. Scripture runes were circulating around his body. For a moment, his whole body glowed and Tao sounds rang out incessantly. In the end, the scripture runes penetrated deep into his bones and spread to his soul light, forming the most gorgeous and complicated patterns. A layer of scripture light screen formed around Chu Feng's body. It was like a large cocoon wrapping around him. This was true enlightenment on a deep level. Robbery induction, great thunder, ancient dream path, phoenix, original demon, and many other ultimate breathing techniques were circulating as if they were incubating a world and nurturing a certain supreme path. Inside the light screen, there was constant rumbling. Scripture runes flew everywhere and the chain of order was like firewood. The Tao flames lit up the darkness and burned Chu Feng. At the end of the Soul River, in the world behind the door, the man in the black light was still domineering. After hearing White Crow's words, he didn't budge an inch and insisted on 100 ancestral talisman papers. If you don't give it to me, I'll kill you, you damned white duck. He threatened to take it himself and go to the end to take a look. As for the so-called final stage of the Soul River, he was doubtful about what exactly existed there and whether there were any living beings there. He wanted to investigate it himself. I'm guessing that all the things in that place are dead, right? He said fearlessly. How dare you? White Crow was furious. The man in the black light was too arrogant. He had a domineering attitude. Did he really think this was a good place? He didn't even think about how many cultivators had died here in the past. Countless people from different eras wanted to conquer this place, but in the end they all bled and couldn't get what they wanted. Who are you calling impudent? With a boom, the man in the black light strode forward and directly swung the bell in his hand towards White Crow. The bell waves shook and disturbed the peace of this place. You! White Crow's pupils constricted and he quickly spread his wings. White light was like the sea, forming a light screen and blocking the bell wave. It seemed that he didn't want the ripples of the great Tao to affect the world behind him. Don't force me, White Crow said coldly. However, he quickly relaxed and said, some things, breaking the balance now may not be what you want. On the contrary, it will be a disaster. He even began to transmit his voice to the man in the black light. There were some things that could be discussed. The man snorted and secretly shook the bell. However, this time, it was not aimed at the end of the Soul River and White Crow, but at the path he came from. A beam of bell waves pierced through the sky and was restricted in one direction. Clang! In the end, the bell waves rang out outside the realm. It was unknown which level of heaven it came from. In a split second, a certain black beast that had been cursing and swearing because he had bitten a human bone had a look of disgust on its face. Its fur stood on end. The great Emperor's bell. It was bewildered. Who was ringing the bell? Then, its dog face changed especially quickly and became darker than the bottom of a black pot. It said angrily, these days the little bastards have all gone crazy. You all dare to provoke me again and again. Have you all forgotten how cruel I was in the past? Just wait, I'll kill all of you. At the same time, at the end of the Soul River, the man in the black light once again threw out the rectangular copper block in his hand and made it project. A beam of bronze light left the Soul River and shone into the primal chaos outside the Yang realm. Who is disturbing me? These little bastards of the later generation must have all gone crazy. How dare they try to bait me? In the primal chaos, someone was also angry. At the same time, in the Yin prefecture, the fused body of number 9 stabbed the master of the Soul Light Cave until there were large holes all over his body. He was covered in blood stains, and the great path that surrounded his body was broken. The order was also completely obliterated. You can't kill me. This is a personal grudge. Everyone wants to break me one by one. How can I be a creature of the Soul River? The master of the Soul Light Cave argued. Then let's go to the Soul Light Cave and take a look, said Ju63. At this time, the martial emperor frowned. He could vaguely hear the prayers of his disciples. What had happened? It was somewhat evil. What kind of dog food was fed to the dogs? What kind of nonsense was this? Chapter 1468. Everyone, you must believe me. The beings of the first mountain are venting their anger and taking revenge for their personal grudges. They're prepared to attack us for Li's sake. Make preparations early. The master of the Soul Light Cave coughed up a blood clot. His heart was penetrated from front to back, and the important parts of his body were penetrated. Even the space between his eyebrows had a shocking bloody hole. If his soul light wasn't strong enough, he would have been severely injured by this blow from the space between his eyebrows. At the very least, his strength would have been damaged. That was a soul-killing blow. Bang! Number 9's fused body directly struck him again, sending him flying. Moreover, all of his true blood exploded with a boom, and even his body was torn into pieces. Do you think I'm too easy to talk to? Geo63 grinned, revealing his pearly white teeth. As he spoke, he picked up a weapon from the broken blood and bones. It was shaped like a sword, but it had edges and corners. It was a soul-striking whip, an ultimate weapon. Normally, the master of the Soul Light Cave relied on his own supreme soul to control this whip and attack his opponent's soul light. It was a great killing weapon that was impossible to defend against. But now, Geo63 held the soul-striking whip in his mouth. Crack! Crack! He chewed it. Without even blinking, he forcefully bit it off and swallowed it. Around him, the pupils of several people contracted. The teeth of this dead man's skin were too good. They were even harder than the ultimate weapons of the primary stage that had been refined for thousands of years. He ate it just like that? You get what you eat. Number 9's fusion body grinned. Crunch, 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 crunch. He ate with relish and finally swallowed everything down. Beside him, the corner of the martial madman's mouth twitched. This was because he had once lost his weapon. His train of thought was broken. The call in the unseen world was originally very faint, and now it was directly cut off. The body of the Soul Light Cave's master reappeared. To a creature of his level, it wasn't so easy to die. 9 rebirths and 1 thought could all be achieved. Everyone, do you really wish for the first mountain to be defeated one by one? The master of the Soul Light Cave had a gloomy expression. The great path and divine chains of order outside his body couldn't be completely reconnected. Some things were broken, and they needed time to reconstruct. At present, his strength had weakened quite a bit. Geo63 raised his brows and said, So that's how it is. You still have accomplices in the dark, as well as creatures from the Soul River? You hoped he could save you. When the others heard this, their eyes became deep. They didn't want to be dragged into this mess. Moreover, there were indeed people who had shown killing intent toward the master of the Soul Light Cave. They were very dissatisfied and had long suspected that there was something wrong with him. Let's go. Let's go to the Soul Light Cave and take a look. Everything will come to light when we get there, said an ultimate creature from a certain source of darkness in the underground world. Go! Tai, in particular, nodded in agreement. This old fellow had lived for far too long. His strength was unfathomable, and his words carried a lot of weight. Then let's go take a look together. The others nodded in agreement. Everyone, I feel that something is strange. I wish to return to the Tao right to take a look. The martial emperor frowned. What he felt just now was too special. He felt a bit flustered, and it was extremely strange. Since ancient times, he had seen all kinds of grand scenes. How could this be? Tai frowned. Even though no one called out to him, he still felt that something wasn't right. Previously, he had a sudden impulse. Something seemed to have happened behind him. The master of the Black Blood Research Institute couldn't help but frown. He also felt that something was wrong. His heart was stuffy. Who was making trouble for him? How about this? Let's go to the Soul Light Cave first. It won't take too long, said Ju 63. The few of them felt that today's events were strange. Perhaps it was better to stay together than separate. If something really happened later, they could join hands and start a massacre. Therefore, they quickly came to an agreement. They would go to the Soul Light Cave first. At this time, Number 9 looked at the door of the Great Een realm. Through the gap, he saw the coffin that blocked the door. His expression was complicated. There were too many things in the depths of his eyes. We'll investigate when we get back, he said softly. In fact, he had an idea in his heart. He knew very well whose handiwork this was. It was of the same origin. In the outer realm, on an unknown layer of heaven, the big black dog had a gloomy face. It bared its incomplete canine teeth and snorted. It really wanted to bite someone. It was extremely displeased. Someone had played with its heartstrings again and again. It was definitely intentional. The ways of the world have changed. The little bastards are getting more and more outrageous. They're forcing this emperor to come out of seclusion. Do they all want to be killed? Even though it was resentful, it really couldn't bear it anymore. It heard the sound of a bell. This was a fragment of the Celestial Emperor's great bell. It had to go and take a look. This emperor is really old. Why hasn't that damn Tao bone been pulled back yet? If it were in the past, it would have been brought back long ago. Why would it be so slow? It was like an old ox pulling a cart. In fact, if people knew that it was in the outer realm, separated by a few layers of heaven, and that it had such means, they would definitely be amazed. This was already quite impressive. How many people in the present world could cross realms and create chaos? The black dog was doing exactly that. This emperor's momentum seems a little weak. Everywhere I pass, it should be like the northern wind sweeping the land, 100 grass snapping, and 1,000 waves washing the starry sky. I should swallow the sea of stars. It gritted its teeth and finally brought back the Tao bone. Moreover, it sensed that there was something unusual on another island. A big mouth appeared again. With a boom, it bit toward the dark land where the martial madman had secluded himself all year round. Bang! The dark land shattered. Indistinctly, a dog's barking could be heard. Motherf asterisk cur, what kind of damned place is this? The stench is overwhelming. This emperor has lost so much this time. Bah! In the martial madman's dojo, a group of people were no longer crazy. They all shut up. The whole world was silent. They were incredibly shocked. The place where a martial emperor secluded himself. What was that? The underground palace was grand, but it had been broken open. Iron chains rattled, and a rotten creature was chained inside. The stench was overwhelming, and it was indescribable. The dog was vomiting because it had bitten the underground palace, and it had bitten off a lot of the rotten flesh of the humanoid creature. What is going on? There's a martial emperor's aura. That's an ultimate creature. How could it be chained in the underground palace? What's the situation now? Even the great heavenly venerables were trembling in fear. They had accidentally discovered a secret today. Would they be silenced? This emperor is really unlucky. The current world is my nemesis. A bunch of brats are rotten to the point of oozing pus. Blard. The black dog was really vomiting. It quickly and decisively retracted its big mouth and ran away. In the underground palace, the rotten creature's hair was disheveled. It slowly raised its head and its eyes were blank. Finally, the underground palace slowly closed. Its figure disappeared, but the people in the distance all felt a chill. The last scene was too horrifying. That rotten creature really looked like a martial emperor. Apart from this, a few people also saw something even more horrifying. In the depths of the underground palace, there were two figures with disheveled hair. Their bodies were similar, and they were also rotten. They were chained there, motionless. What technique is the ancestor cultivating? What method is he developing? What path is he creating? The great heavenly venerable's lips trembled. Then, he turned around and left. He felt a strong sense of unease, so he quickly and decisively left this Tao field. Many people were bewildered, but they didn't leave. In the outside world, the black dog vomited again and again. With a sad expression, it said, "It's really too hard for me." It sighed and said, "Now, this emperor's body is extremely weak. My strength is not even 100% or even 1,000. It's too bad I'm too weak. I can't even travel the world now. It's so sad. Otherwise, I'll skin a dragon for a sumptuous meal and roam the 10,000 realms. I'll walk around and look for the whereabouts of my old friends." It had a sad expression on its face. If it was heard by others, they would be speechless. You want to roast a dragon for no reason? Did dragons know? If they did, they would definitely beat you to death. Then, the black dog was really sad. It wasn't self-deprecating and comforting like before. It was truly melancholy, perplexed, and there was a boundless sense of loss. Those people from the past, will I still be able to see them? Generation after generation, how many of them are still alive? The grand occasion of the past, the dazzling era, the heaven's pride contending for hegemony, the peerless competition, all came to an end. After the prosperity, the world withered, never to be seen again. In the vast world, I can't find a single familiar person. The rest of my life is too lonely and miserable. It's like drinking cold water. I can't find those people anymore. It's been too long, I almost can't remember what you all looked like. An old dog was sad, and tears were about to fall. Its fur was dull, and in some places there was no fur at all. It was bald and old beyond recognition. However, in the end it still collected its emotions. Holding a broken bell, it prepared to force its way into the world of the living. It naturally sensed something and knew where it was, but it still wanted to go and take a look. It wanted to charge into the place where it had fought in the past. "Filthy things, even if I'm old, I'll kill all of you today. I don't believe that nothing happened to you after the battle back then. Weren't you afraid of being beaten? Weren't you crippled? Impossible. Even if you didn't die, you'd be more or less dead." The black dog wasn't afraid at all. If it really forced its way over, it had the intention to fight at the end of the Soul River again. It had personally participated in it back then. "Great Emperor, you sleep for now. I'll go find the important thing you lost." The black dog threw caution to the wind, and its attitude was one of desperation. It used this opportunity to go to the end of the Soul River again. No matter how one looked at it, it was going to risk its life and fight a great battle again. At this moment, it straightened its crooked back, raised its head, and glared angrily with its bell-like eyes. Its bloody mouth was wide open, and it looked like it could swallow the universe. At the same time, it was accompanied by a boundless murderous aura that almost tore apart the heavens and realms. It caused many realms to be covered in a rain of blood that poured down, shocking all regions. This was the murderous power that it had accumulated in countless battles that concerned the survival of the world. It had defeated countless enemies and slaughtered the world, but it had to bear the great calamity on its own. I've killed countless enemies, and I'm also an emperor with great merits. Does the heavens think that I'm going to die? Are they crying for me? To send me off? The black dog looked up at the sky. Was this a journey of no return, the last one? However, it still moved, and it wanted to go to the Soul River. Clang! The broken bell rang softly, and the Emperor's corpse lying on it also seemed to tremble slightly. Emperor's bell, are you warning me? However, there's no other way. I still have to go to the end of the Soul River. I really can't find that medicine anywhere else. Perhaps it's only there. I want to save the Emperor, but there's no time. I can't hold on any longer. Today, I'll step on the Soul River again and enter that battlefield. The black dog was solemn and sentimental, and the boundless fighting spirit in its bones completely erupted. It had been lying dormant and enduring for too long. Great Emperor, I believe that one day you will wake up. I definitely don't believe that you've completely died. Now I'll go find the medicine primer. I want you to live. It moved, and its gaze became more and more intense. It was so bright that it was frightening, and its gaze burned through the great realm's barrier. Great Emperor, I was saved by you when I was young, and you adopted me by your side. That's how I became who I am today. Although I'm no longer in the most powerful state in the world, I still want to fight for you. At this time, the black dog stood up, and then it lifted the Emperor's corpse, carrying it on its back. It lifted the large bell, and suddenly took a large step forward. It wanted to fight with the corpse on its back, carrying the celestial Emperor of the past. No matter what, it would never abandon him, and it would never let the corpse leave its eyes, never ever leaving. You adopted me back then, and in this life, I'll do everything I can to repay you. The Emperor's body has appeared again. The black dog growled, and its old eyes were filled with tears. It remembered too many things of the past. Outside the realm, in the primal chaos, someone sighed. Is there a need for this? You're already so old, yet you're still fighting with your life. Isn't this forcing me to accompany you to death? Are you really going to fight in the end again? This person was also disappointed and sad. He said softly, Actually, you're not the only one left. I'm still half alive. You dog, why can't you think it through? Fine, why don't we just return and die together? Chapter 1469. An extremely old and furless black dog with murky tears in its old eyes carried the Emperor's corpse on its back, trying its best to straighten its hunched back. This life doesn't have much time left. I want to bring you back. This was its wish. How could such a powerful celestial emperor die? It wanted him to come back to life. However, it didn't have much time left. If it didn't fight for the last time, it might never have another chance. Old wounds were difficult to heal. Coupled with the fact that its vitality had already dried up, it only had a short journey left in its declining life. Time was like a knife that would eventually cut everything. It couldn't hold on any longer, but it really wanted to see his extraordinary invincible body return. It wanted to see him break the Soul River with a roar, and see him punch the four extremities floating earth. The glorious years would reappear. While it was on its way, something broke through the air and blocked its path. Huh! The black dog stopped in its tracks, its pupils dilating. A rotting hand weakly passed through space, bringing an animal skin book to its eyes. As long as you're alive, there's still hope. As long as you're still here and haven't returned to dust, in the future, there might be a turning point. Work hard and endure, both of us will live. There weren't many words, but there was a heavy sense of worry and concern in the vicissitudes of life, as well as a reluctance to leave this world. He advised the black dog not to be impulsive. The hand looked a little fat, perhaps swollen. It was grayish-black and smelled rotten. It was unbearable to look at. What kind of disaster had it gone through? But it was still stubbornly alive. The black dog was a little stunned at the sight of the hand. It was about to bare its teeth, but in the end there was only sadness. In the chaos, a man without a right hand sat there weakly and sighed. If you choose to go, I'll go with you and fight in the Soul River's ultimate land again. But, you dog, you have to work hard to stay alive. The people of the past were all dead. There weren't many left. War after war that concerned the survival of the worlds had drained the vitality of their generation, and they were covered in wounds. It was an unimaginable sacrifice, but not many people knew about it now. How many heroes had withered, leaving behind only ruins. The black dog's eyes were red. The animal skin book that its rotting hands had brought with it was filled with the years of the past, as well as its reluctance to leave this world. If they were alive, they were the final proof and traces left behind by the people of that generation. If they were to die, then there would be nothing left, and even the traces would be completely erased. What glory was there to talk about? Even if it had existed, it would be buried in the dust of history and forgotten by the later generations. But I still want to go. I want to fight again. I'm not satisfied. The black dog roared at the sky. Although it was emaciated, it held its head high. It carried the emperor corpse on its back. It turned around to look at the rotting hand and the beast's skin book, and then took a step forward with difficulty. At the end of the Soul River, in the world behind the door, after the man in the black light activated the clock piece and bronze, he became quiet. Whether it was to release the news or to find someone to take the blame, he actually had no intention of harming anyone. What was he trying to do? He wanted to stir up a big matter and threaten the Soul River. If they didn't give him any benefits, he would fight a bloody battle to the end and cripple this place. At this stage, the Soul River seemed very unwilling to start a war. He found someone to be the scapegoat, or rather, he pulled someone along with him. He wanted to subdue the enemy without a fight and intimidate the creatures in the Soul River. That dog, that emperor won't live for long. He sighed softly. If he could find the medicine that the dog wanted, it might change many things. The fates of the dead might even be reshaped. The effects would be far-reaching and boundless. It might even shake the foundations of the past and present. As for those people and those things, he had heard of them before. He was one of the few who knew the truth. When he was young, he yearned for it greatly. His blood surged, and he set that resplendent world as his goal. At this stage, he sighed. The white crow was communicating with him through sound transmission. He lowered his stance slightly and said that he would give him 2 ancestral talisman papers and let him leave immediately. Are you trying to get rid of a beggar? I want 100 and you're giving me 2? Dead duck. The man in the black light raised his eyebrows, and divine light shot out from his pupils. He held the long metal piece that had fallen off the bronze coffin and was about to strike it. The white crow's expression was gloomy. How many years had passed? How many epochs had passed? Where would he find 100 of those talisman papers? Even if he rummaged through all the reincarnation pits that existed, were broken, were buried and disappeared, he wouldn't even be able to find 100. You are making things difficult for me. Where am I going to find them for you? I have already expressed my sincerity. Are you sure you want to fight? The white crow's expression was cold to the extreme. His 2 wings released a blinding white light, as if a deathly white sun was burning and releasing a destructive substance. You dare not speak properly with me again? The man in the black light was ridiculously domineering. He threatened him face to face like this, and he even took action. Symbols extended out from the long bronze piece in his hand. He used energy to construct an indistinct bronze coffin, and the coffin lid was the first to form. With a hong sound, he smashed the coffin lid over, directly smacking the powerful and intimidating white crow. The white crow was furious. How many years had it been since someone dared to make a move against him like this? Today, he was provoked again and again. Don't take my patience for the greater good and treat it as weakness. When I massacred all the worlds in the past, I didn't even know where your master was. While speaking, the white crow's body didn't change. It was still a foot long, but its wings shone and the feathers on them rose sharply. They were like 100,000 heavenly swords, ringing loudly. Then, all the white feathers turned into rainbows, all of them as thick as mountains. They pierced through the void and pierced forward. They were comparable to heavenly spears, incomparably sharp. Clang, clang, clang. An ear-piercing sound rang out. The white feathers released blinding light, turning into heavenly spears. They all pierced forward, and even the soul rivers were boiling and burning. Every feather formed a spear point, carrying a sea of soul force. They surged and surged like a sea of stars. It was shocking. However, all of the feathers were blocked by the coffin lid. The bronze coffin lid was like a world-suppressing demonic mountain. It pressed down, blocking all things, covering the world, and blocking the 100,000 flying feathers. Dang, dang, dang. Great Tao fiery light splashed out, order breaking apart. This place became chaotic, space and time even caving in. Damn duck, there's something wrong with your state. The male in the dark light carried the coffin lid, directly pressing over. He walked up step by step, forcing his way to the high ground ahead, overlooking the white crow. On the white crow's tail, a special feather shone, rising sharply like a phoenix feather. It led to the limits of the soul river, connecting to a certain ultimate place. At this time, the aura on its body became different, as if it immediately increased a great deal. Its face was cold as it said, "Don't force me. If you really force my complete body to appear, the consequences will be unimaginable. I won't return until the heavens are dyed in blood." Then, it relaxed its expression and said, "What exactly do you want? What exactly do I want?" The black hair of the male in the dark light danced in the wind. His entire face was white, his eyes incomparably sharp, his heroic spirit pressing down, and his powerful aura explosively increased. From a long-term perspective, I want to flatten you all, overturn the floating earth of the four extremes, bury the world's burial pit, and sort out the ancient reincarnation road before the age of collapse of emperors, and never mind, I don't want to go too far. In the distance, the white crow was dumbfounded. Even a creature like it felt that the man in the dark light had gone crazy. What was he thinking? Had he lost his mind? After a sigh, the man in the dark light was no longer so powerful, and somewhat gloomy, he said, "And right now, I only want her to live." He lowered his head, looking at a dim petal that had already withered, leaving only a faint fragrance. What future, what general trend? If he couldn't even protect the people around him, couldn't even protect a beauty that was trying her best to keep up with his footsteps, then what qualifications did he have to talk about breaking out of this situation and changing the world? Thinking of this, the man in the dark light pressed forward like a mountain, saying, "I only want her to live. I've said it many times, give me another 100 ancestral talisman papers. Are you going to give them or not?" This negotiation could no longer continue. Encountering a madman, this was the rhythm of the crow's death. The white crow was so angry that it wanted to curse. However, due to a certain concern, it did not want to cause the ultimate earthquake in the depths of the soul river. Right now, it wanted to focus on calming down all the unstable factors. It took a deep breath and said, "If you want a person to reincarnate, one talisman paper is enough. Why do you need so many? The person is no longer here, the corpse has rotted into dust, the soul has turned into light rain, who will use the talisman paper? How can one be enough?" The man in the dark light opened his mouth, his voice was low, "I want more. I want to use the remaining supreme power of the ancestral talisman paper to once again condense a strand of her soul. Perhaps I can create something out of nothing, and let her return." The white crow's eyes were not friendly, and there was coldness in the depth of his eyes. She was already dead, and her soul was gone, yet you still want to mess around, and still want to talk about reincarnation? No wonder he wanted 100 pieces of ancestral talisman paper. He wanted to borrow the supreme power of the legendary person to create something out of nothing. This was no longer a matter of Tao and creation, It was indescribable and incomprehensible. The White Crow clenched its teeth. This was not realistic, even the Soul River could not provide it. The ancestral talisman paper left behind by that person was almost used up. So many years had passed, how could there be so many left? Even in the various worlds, some unimaginable old fellows had some in their hands, but even all of them added up would not be enough. Moreover, who would take them out? The White Crow said, "You have to understand, we indeed do not have many. Back then, we were not on good terms with that person, and we did not want to have any contact with him. These were obtained from the later generations, they cannot satisfy you." What a nice way of putting it. Not on good terms? Not willing to have contact? You are the ones hiding, not daring to come out. The man in the dark light taunted. The White Crow was furious. That was an indescribable period of time. The Soul River was isolated from the outside world for some reason, and fell into a crisis. In addition to that person's appearance, the Soul River became even quieter. It said coldly, "That person's strength is something we all admit, but it doesn't mean that we are invincible, that we cannot fight. It is because of our own problems." Back then, the source of the Soul River changed. Its words were extremely cold, and also extremely apathetic. Anyone needs time to grow. Back then, if not for the Soul River changing, do you believe that the Soul River's strength would not be able to stop anyone? However, that person rose up. What could you all do? Later on, he was still messing with you all, also searching for the limits of the underworld, wanting to burn the earth of the four extremes. If not for an even more pressing reason, leaving in a hurry, I reckon that even your father would have long become a dead duck. The existences behind your clan would have already breathed their last and kicked their legs. You can be insolent, you can act impudently towards me, but there are some existences that cannot be slandered by you, cannot be humiliated. They are unmatched, truly overlooking the endless ages, watching as great eras change one after another. Even if that person returned, he still wouldn't be able to pacify them. What a joke! Do you dare to use the special altar of the Soul River's ultimate land? Use it to burn the Tao, burn the ancestral talisman paper, chant that person's name, provoke that person, and see if he would come back and destroy you all. Heavenly Emperor-level existences are very strong, but no matter how great a person is, even if he defies the heavens and earth, even if he messes up the river of time, he still can't change the true general trend. It's not like there haven't been such existences before. Before the age of Emperor collapse, it was truly dazzling, but the blood was also very cold. Incomparably great experts, they were still all killed. The White Crow said coldly. Don't talk nonsense, I just want to ask, do you dare to use that altar of yours to summon that person back? The man in the black light said. He has long disappeared, there has been no news of him for many years. Many people have been looking for him, but they have all failed, and have long since lost contact, the White Crow said indifferently. Fine, he has disappeared, and we won't look for him anymore. Do you dare to awaken the Heavenly Emperor who fought in this battle back then? Let's fight again. The man in the black light said. You seem to know some things? The White Crow revealed a look of surprise, and at the same time a little apprehensive. There were some secrets that perhaps even the survivors of the battle back then didn't know completely. I also know that back then, it wasn't just your Soul River ultimate land that acted, there were other things that emerged from the ancient underworld, monsters that crawled out of the Heavenly Emperor burial pit. The man in the black light said coldly. Who are you really? With your identity, with your age, it's impossible for you to come into contact with these things. The White Crow was really a little apprehensive. I'm one of those who delivered your funeral bell. The man in the black light replied coldly. Then there's nothing more to say, let's fight. The White Crow said coldly. It retreated by itself, a special feather on its tail that was as dazzling as the plume of a phoenix, no longer pure white, but emitted a strange demonic light. At the same time, it was like a 9-colored mother gold chain, locking it up and bringing it flying backwards, about to enter the Soul River ultimate land. However, it didn't completely disappear, only retreating far enough, and then ordered, "Kill him!" In fact, the man in the black light made the first move the moment it retreated. The great bell smashed over in a long and drawn-out manner. The white crow trembled violently, its whole body covered in multicolored light to resist. Buzz. At the same time, many creatures appeared in this short moment. The riverside of the Soul River was no longer a sandy land, but a low-karst cave. All kinds of densely packed insects swarmed out, pouncing toward the black light. These insects were similar to the ones that had previously crawled in and out of the rotting flesh of the great universe-level beings. Each insect was as long as a finger, and they tore through space, leaving behind long tails of light that carried dense ominous matter. It was as if tens of thousands of arrows had shot out in unison, exploding space. Kill! The great bell instantly covered the sky. It covered all the insects and collected them inside. Then, the man rang the bell. Rumble! Inside, the divinity granules boiled, the ancestral Tao substance surged, and all the insects wailed in anguish, struggling incessantly. Each of them overflowed with endless divine energy, and they were actually ridiculously powerful. However, what did they encounter this time? The Emperor's bell. Even though it was damaged and only the size of a palm, they couldn't resist this kind of vibration. With a bang, all of the insects exploded into pieces in the end. Heavenly Insect 9 Transformations, Cocoon Rebirth, shouted the white crow in the distance. It was controlling the swarm of insects. Wung wung wung. The void trembled and then exploded. Many more powerful insects flew out from the karst cave, all of them carrying light cocoons. These were ancestral insects of an even more powerful level. There weren't as many as before, but they were definitely several times more powerful. They actually disturbed time. They were merely insects, yet they were entangled by time fragments. What level of creature was this? If the outside world knew of this, they would definitely gasp. Is this the initial form of a calamity insect that can slaughter the world? The man in the black light said softly. But he didn't care about these things and attacked again. He suddenly shook the bell, and the bell waves swept out like 108,000 sword light. They immediately caused the void to explode. Not far away, the Soul River also exploded, and the soul light of many powerful beings appeared. They were screaming and wailing, and each wave contained a powerful soul. Chi-chi. Many insect cocoons trembled lightly, and then they released terrifying insect cries. Now, those burning souls rose from the Soul River, turning into pure soul matter. They were all guided over and absorbed by the heavy cocoons. Could it be that you still want to break out of the cocoon and transform into butterflies? Die! The man in the black light shouted. A light shout sounded. The space between his brows shone, activating the 2 weapons in his hands, blasting the area in front of him. All types of cocoons shattered, howling in grief. Endless ancestral insects died. However, there were a few ancestral insects that attached themselves to the undying karst cave that survived. They were silvery white and intimidating, not about to turn into butterflies. Maggots. Not all insects can turn into butterflies because there are maggots, worthy of being the filthy things nurtured at the end of the Soul River. The man in the black light mocked. Shut up, the white crow said coldly, his gaze intimidating. That man was too sarcastic. How could he be a maggot? This was the initial form of a calamity insect, currently in the process of evolution. As expected, there were insects that didn't die. In that instant, their auras erupted, frantically absorbing the power of the Soul River, as well as devouring the energy and nutrients of their companions that exploded around them. The insects that were left behind were especially powerful, all types of terrifying irregular scenes curling about their bodies. It was as if stellar rivers were splitting apart, solar stars exploding, the cosmos sinking. They were evolving towards the final form of a calamity insect. Legend had it that there were 10 types of calamity insects in this world, all of them possessing world-slaughtering power. Once they turned into complete bodies, they were immeasurable, able to kill dragons for food, devour the sun and moon as nutrients. Hiding in the darkness, if you aren't maggots, then what are you? All of you die. The man in the black light shouted. Several insects screamed crazily. They rushed at each other, devouring each other, wishing to advance to the very peak, become the only one. However, this time, the man in the black light was incomparably cold. His hands seemed to have become transparent, activating endless power. Meanwhile, the 2 weapons in his hands had truly revived, to the extent where it could even be said that they were revived. Hong. If God obstructs, slay God. If Buddha obstructs, slay Buddha. The heavens collapsed and the earth split apart. Endless howls sounded from the Soul River, time itself becoming chaotic, as if the past and present were reversed. Forget about the fact that these weren't even the final form of calamity insects. Even if the source of the 10 great calamity insects came, it still wouldn't be enough. The 2 weapons revived, blasting everything apart. Pung! When only 2 of the insects were left, they exploded, even the cave behind them collapsing, turning into nothingness. That was the bug nest, rich Tao ancestor matter, but in the end, it still turned into ashes. However, the man in the black light still felt a bit of restraining fear. This soul river was too special, the ancestral insects raised here could actually evolve so quickly. If he didn't kill them, could it be that a true ultimate calamity insect would appear in such a short amount of time? Hong Long. The man in the black light didn't stop. The 2 revived weapons were still activated, powerfully blasting forward, blasting the white crow's body. The white crow's wings moved, dazzling silver light surging, but it was still seriously injured. White feathers flew about, its body dyed in blood. If not for its special tail feather absorbing special matter from the ultimate land, as well as guiding over unmatched soul light, quickly protecting its body, it would have most likely exploded. You are forcing me! The white crow was furious. In the depths of the Soul River, where the ultimate calamity earth was, terrifying fluctuations were released. Heaven and earth were about to collapse, strange and inauspicious matter surging like a tide, drowning out this place. Are you going to return it or not? It shouted. At this moment, anyone could tell that there really was something wrong with the Soul River. It was angered to the extreme, but at the last moment, it was still trying to avoid aggravating the situation. Bring over the ancestral symbol papers. The man in the black light said coldly. Here, there are only 4, all of them are yours, go. The white crow said through clenched teeth. In that instant, several especially simple and unadorned papers flew over, entering the black light. They were simple and ordinary, only a jar engraved on them. What did it look like? A milk jar? It was because one could vaguely make out a pure and immature smiling face, accompanying it there. The corners of the man in the black light twitched. This was what was drawn on the ancestral symbol papers. That person really was. However, soon after, his expression became serious again, recalling a few legends. The happier that youth was in his youth, the more sorrowful he became later on. Perhaps, in that person's heart, only a carefree childhood was the happiest moment of his life. Therefore, when that person carved the ancestral symbol papers, he directly left behind that eternal period of time in his heart, entrusted his emotions, and forgot about his worries. Thinking of this, he looked at the ancestral symbol papers again. They were no longer graffiti, nor were they playful and mischievous works, but they were incomparably heavy, so heavy that one could not breathe. Although it looked like a childish smile, it hid great sorrow, and an endless heavy aura assaulted one's face. A person's loneliness, a person's long journey, only leaving behind a final legend, never to be seen again. No, you guys still have more, take them all out, at least 10. The man in the black light shouted. The White Crow had had enough. The man in the black light was too strong, too hateful, even more despicable than the black dog in the past, wanting to snatch everything it saw. It really wanted to say, "What is your relationship?" Fortunately, after so many years, it finally could not see that dog again. It should be dead. The White Crow let out a long sigh. Woof! In the void, a dog was approaching, sneezing madly along the way. "Who is showing me such malice, such strong malice? See if I don't bite you to death." The black dog ran on its hind legs, its copper bell-like eyes shining, and its bald tail raised high. Is it an illusion? The White Crow was suspicious. It had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. It was extremely ominous. However, this made it feel a little absurd. Wasn't their place the source of the ominous? Strange. Third Sect Leader. Chapter 1470. The White Crow shook its head. So many years had passed, and the black dog should have died long ago. It probably didn't even leave behind any descendants. However, it revealed a strange expression. It stared at the man in the black light again and again. Was this person really not related to the black dog? "What are you looking at?" The man's black hair draped over his shoulders. His gaze was unkind because he felt a wave of malice. Perhaps because the White Crow couldn't hold it in, or perhaps because of the hatred in its heart, it couldn't help but say, "Is a certain legendary emperor closely related to your ancestor?" However, it regretted it as soon as it finished speaking. "Damned duck, I'll beat you to death." The aura of the man in the black light erupted. He swung the weapon in his hand and slapped forward. It was as if he could break the embankment and destroy all kinds of ruined temples along the way. He wanted to kill the White Crow. The man was very sharp. He understood the malice in the White Crow's eyes and knew who it was referring to when it said emperor. That was why he wanted to kill it. Caw! The White Crow cried out loudly. Soul light overflowed into the sky in an instant. The white light was like a een flame. The special feather on its tail absorbed supreme power to block the great bell and coffin lid. The most terrifying thing was that there was a mysterious soul blood flowing from the depths of the Soul River. It engulfed the void and stopped the Emperor weapon. Otherwise, the White Crow wouldn't have been able to stop it. Even so, after the Emperor weapon revived, even if it was only a fragment, it still let out a mournful cry. It flapped its wings and quickly retreated. Because the endless white feathers were withering, the countless divine chains of order on its body were broken. Its flesh was gradually burning and was about to turn into ashes. What a terrifying Emperor weapon! Its eyes were cold. It landed on a special piece of land. It was black and terrifying. There, it obtained support. Its body that had turned into ashes was reconstructed and transformed. Flesh grew out. "Forget it. Stop," it said coldly. It warned that it shouldn't be forced. Otherwise, its complete body would come into being. No matter what, it was still an existence that made the heavens tremble. Now, it could be considered to have compromised. It didn't want to make a big fuss and didn't want any accidents to happen in the depths of the Soul River. Another 2 ancestral talisman papers flew out. It gave them to the heroic man in the black light and wanted to settle this matter as soon as possible. There are more here. The man in the black light had long hair that hung down to his waist. It was jet black and thick, and his face was fair and translucent. Within his pupils was the scene of the Soul River evaporating and the ultimate doom collapsing. Moreover, it was accompanied by the falling of stars in the universe. His heroic spirit was overwhelming, and he could be considered handsome, but right now, his killing intent was boundless. The White Crow sneered. It had already come to its senses. The man in the black light had gone overboard with his threat. Perhaps there was no need for a true battle. It stared at the man in the black light and said, "There's really no more. If you really want it, I can give you real underworld reincarnation talismans. 100 of them, no problem." Then, it quickly added, "Furthermore, it's the reincarnation parchment of the ancient hell from before the fall of emperors. You should know that this is an extremely rare item, and its value is immeasurable. Since time immemorial, countless powerful cultivators have offered sacrifices to it, but none of them have been able to procure a single piece of it. I don't care. 100 of those can't even compare to a single talisman paper from that person. I only want the ancestral talisman paper. The male within the black light's tone was firm. He did not accept it. He had steeled his heart to empty this place. He added, "The reincarnation parchment of the ancient hell is only strange and ominous. It's too dirty. I don't want it." The white crow said in a low voice, "What are you talking about? Out of all the living beings in the world, how many people don't acknowledge the ancient path of reincarnation? It's formed naturally by heaven and earth." The expression of the man in the black light was cold. "Do you believe that it's formed naturally by heaven and earth? Does your master, the living being at the end of the soul river, believe that?" At the mention of this, he felt deeply uneasy. The origin of the ancient path of reincarnation was absolutely terrifying. If it was proven that the ancient path of reincarnation was artificially created, and that it had influenced countless eras, it would shock the world. If it wasn't formed naturally by heaven and earth, just the thought of it was terrifying. When he thought of the ancestral talisman paper, he felt a little more at ease. After all, it was created by that person back then. During that person's era, the ancient path of reincarnation had actually disappeared. Just thinking about it made him feel a little more at ease. Was the ancient hell and the ancient path of reincarnation avoiding that person? Or did the ancient path of reincarnation meet with an accident at that time as well? Thinking deeper, the soul river and the ancient hell seemed to have met with an accident at the same time. Could it be that there was some kind of connection between them? They came from the same source, or perhaps it was because of the same reason that they didn't appear in the world. When he thought about the legend of that person personally digging up the ancient path of reincarnation and destroying many paths, it was truly shocking. It was a complete mess. That person carved the ancestral talisman paper himself and created a different path of reincarnation. His boldness was too great. The most important thing was that after that person left, the ancient hell didn't recklessly touch the things he created. Back then, when that person left, could it be that the ancient hell and the end of the soul river, as well as the monsters in the celestial emperor's burial pit, couldn't stand him and paid a huge price to lure him away to a battlefield that was difficult to return from? The man in the black light guessed, and he didn't hide it at all. He said it in front of the white crow, which could be considered as looking down on the end of the soul river. If it was true, then wouldn't the soul river have lowered its head back then? "You're thinking too much," the white crow said coldly. He could create a path of reincarnation alone and fight against the ancient hell. Up until now, no one has destroyed it. This should explain everything. The man in the black light sighed from the bottom of his heart. When he thought of that person, he felt inexplicably at ease. He didn't need to worry about any great danger or crisis. Unfortunately, he had disappeared. After so many years, he had long since lost contact with him. This was a great pity, and it was regrettable. The white crow didn't want to mention that person's life, combat strength, and so on. Perhaps it was because he was afraid of provoking some inexplicable karma. He only talked about the talisman paper. The white crow said, "The ancestral talisman paper you want is extra. Perhaps it's not what you need." "What are you trying to say?" The man in the black light sneered. "You should have heard that that person didn't believe in reincarnation in the beginning. Later on, because too many people around him died, he changed. However, it's difficult to say what he wants to reincarnate. Perhaps it's not people, perhaps it's the world, or something else. It could even be something even more unfathomable. The path of reincarnation he created is different from the ancient hell's path of reincarnation," the white crow said, still trying his best to persuade him. "However, I believe in his talisman paper more," the man in the black light said. The white crow frowned and said, "Let's not talk about that person." Because he felt that something was wrong. After so many years, if he hadn't forcefully sealed and left behind memories of the past, even a creature of his level, even if he could look down on the heavens, would have memories of that person's legends and so on become blurry. Therefore, he was incomparably fearful. He even suspected that there was a problem with himself, or was there a problem with the entire spacetime? When he thought of this, he looked at the man in the black light. Did he know something? After all, he seemed to have some strange origins. The white crow said, "After that person left, he never appeared again. You and I both felt it. Even if one's strength reached a higher level, the memories of him in one's heart gradually became blurry. It was as if he no longer belonged to the entire ancient history. Only a few creatures still feel and know about him. Everyone else has forgotten about him, as if he never existed and never appeared." The man in the black light frowned and was somewhat silent. This was the truth. If he hadn't come into contact with old items related to that person, the memories of that person would indeed have faded with the passage of time. This was truly inconceivable. At this moment, the black dog was approaching, crossing one heaven after another. He walked with the corpse on his back and stood with his head held high. Along the way, he caused an explosive information earthquake. Who did I just see? A black ferocious beast just flew across the sky above my place of seclusion. It's a peerless demon, very much like the dog emperor from back then. It's not dead yet? It's coming back to life. This caused an earth-shattering uproar. Some people saw its afterimage in the void, and could not help but shudder, seriously suspecting that their eyes were playing tricks on them. In reality, there were very few powerhouses who could sense it and whose cave residents happened to be in the black dog's path. There were only a few. Of course, these were all top-notch creatures, or else they wouldn't have been able to recognize the legendary giant black beast. Along the way, the black dog seemed to have understood something. A vague sense of sorrow spread from the Emperor's bell, from the heavens and earth. Was this a final reminder? Naturally, it also felt an ominous premonition and thought of the final outcome. However, it was mentally prepared and aware of its death. Therefore, it didn't stop and still went. Finally, it arrived outside the Yang realm. With a bang, it pierced through the realm wall and took that step. After a long time, it once again set foot in this old world. At this time, there were others who wanted to go to the Soul Light Cave. It was Tai, the master of the Black Blood Research Institute, and others. In reality, they should have arrived a long time ago. It was just that they changed directions along the way and headed for the first mountain. This was because Number 9's fused body was frowning along the way. He realized that something had happened, and it was very serious. It was possible that the heavens would collapse and the earth would cave in. Therefore, he wanted to obtain the ancient artifact. Today, the situation was really going to worsen to an unimaginable extent. Perhaps the 9 human skins were going to become one. At the same time, he believed that he had to bring the killing artifact of the first mountain. At the end of the Soul River, in the world behind the door. The man in the black light frowned. Why hadn't the powerful reinforcements arrived yet? A single person's extortion was definitely not as effective as a group's intimidation. After some calculation, they should have arrived. Damned duck, what do you think of the Celestial Emperor? If he really reappears and kills his way here, what will happen to the creatures in the Soul River's terminus? What era's Celestial Emperor are you talking about? Different eras, different worlds, the heavens have different understandings of this title. It's just a respectful title. Feigning ignorance. If the unrivaled Celestial Emperor who slaughtered his way here back then reappeared, would you all feel fear? The man in the black light said with a faint smile. He sensed something, because it was the bell wave he sent out. He was vigilant and paying attention to that side. Right now, there were some faint fluctuations transmitted over. The white crow's expression was ugly. They won't appear again. It's to the extent where some people have already completely died. Is that so? Why do I feel like a celestial emperor is returning and is going to flatten this place? The man in the black light said indifferently. For example, this celestial emperor. He raised the emperor bell fragment in his hand. Symbols shone resplendently, interweaving into a complete bell body. The aura was grand and majestic, as if it could suppress the 10,000 worlds of the heavens. The white crow became silent. He thought back to some things that happened back then, and only then did he say, "I admit that he was extremely strong. He was once an unrivaled expert who looked down on the heavens, terrifying to a ridiculous degree. However, he still died in the end. Back then, he experienced all types of bloody battles. During the special era when unrivaled experts all appeared, the most terrifying bloodshed and chaos took place. He was targeted, and as a result, he died forever, never to be seen again in this world." When he spoke up to hear, he seemed to have released a breath of air, no longer feeling tense. Those memories, for him, were extremely terrifying, not a good thing. Then, he spoke with a slightly indifferent tone, saying, "What's gone is gone in the end. No matter how great he was, his soul has returned to the earth of misery, his blood bleak." He released a breath of turbid air, becoming more and more relaxed. He died, and everything related to him was gradually erased from this world, including his Tao right and even that dog of his. When he spoke to the end, no matter how one looked at it, there was a bit of a gnashing of teeth. Back then, there was too much hatred, leaving behind a great knot in his heart. "Are you sure that they are all dead, never to be seen again?" The man in the black light revealed a faint smile. "I am sure." The white crow was very conceited. He believed in the information he understood very much. He raised his head, and his tail feathers were resplendent, connecting to the ultimate land of the Soul River. However, he didn't know why, but all of a sudden, his entire body was ice-cold, and his white feathers were about to explode. He felt a strong malice. Almost at the same time, his pupils rapidly contracted. A huge black face covered half the sky, looking down at him just like that. Woof! A loud roar resounded throughout the world. The entire Soul River, the world behind the door, was about to collapse. The white crow was really a little doubtful of life. What did he hear? Was it an illusion, or was it a misconception? Was that a dog's bark? It was 2F** king ear-splitting. He almost lost his hearing, and both his ears were bleeding. His eardrums had definitely been pierced. Even his spirit sense and instincts were now numb. He was shaken to the point that his body was numb, and even his soul light was a little stiff. At this time, many unpleasant memories, many negative emotions, and so on, all surged up at the same time, almost driving the white crow crazy. The dog was here. The white crow wanted to yell, "Weren't you dead?" Although the black dog had a premonition of its own fate, it didn't feel sad in the slightest. It didn't care about itself at all, and still directly came to kill. Moreover, after passing through the soul light cave and hurrying to the world behind the door, it immediately shouted, "Dead duck, you're not dead yet? Get over here and kowtow to your supreme grandfather." The white crow was stupefied. He was sure that this wasn't an illusion, but he really didn't dare to believe his eyes. That dog really appeared? He was just mentioning it a moment ago, but in the end a black dog arrived just as he spoke. That black shadow was too enormous, covering the vast sky. It was so ferocious, roaring at the Soul River, and its flames overflowed to the heavens. The white crow saw it clearly and sensed that familiar yet ancient aura. It was too loathsome, and it was too unforgettable. In the blink of an eye, all the feathers on his body stood up, forming a protective screen of light. Runes filled the sky, and the divine sound of the great Tao rumbled. Moreover, He rapidly fell back and waited in battle formation. Only, he really couldn't accept it. He couldn't understand. How could this dog still be alive? Wasn't he beaten to death? How could he show his face in the present age and live so arrogantly? Soon, he saw the person on the black dog's back. Although he couldn't see his face clearly, he was leaning on the dog emperor, but the white crow already knew who he was. In an instant, the white crow screeched in fright. Burning energy, his feathers exploded in pieces. He fled desperately, almost suffocating, and there was endless horror in the depths of his eyes. "Dead duck, what are you running for? Get over here." The black dog was too overbearing. He had just descended, and he was already clamoring to kill the white crow. The white crow was so angry that he was seeing stars. He couldn't help but glance at the man in the black light. He had a nagging feeling that the two creatures he had encountered were both of the highest quality. Their tones were very similar. "Dead duck, what are you looking at me for?" The man in the black light was furious. The white crow was also angry. Was the man in the black light really not related to that dog? He was really bloody unlucky today. He felt that even if he wasn't beaten to death, he would be angered to death. At this time, another wave of powerhouses arrived outside the Soul Light Cave. Almost all of them had arrived. A group of people went to the Soul River together. Chapter 1471. The White Crow was infuriated. He was holding back his anger. These two outrageous beings were going to drive him to his grave. Especially when he stared at the man in the dark light. He wanted to say, "I can't even look at you? You're too overbearing. Besides, you two are very similar." The man in the dark light was furious. "What do you mean by looking at me again?" He felt that the white crow was full of malice. He could see through the meaning of those eyes. No matter what, he could still be considered heroic, right? However, those eyes of a dead duck were really courting death. When his attitude and aura were revealed, it was the black dog's turn to be annoyed. At this level, his spiritual sense was unimaginably strong, and he could sense it in an instant. As expected, the white crow did not say anything. It was the black dog who spoke first, and his words were directed at the heroic man in the dark light. "Little black brat, what's with your attitude?" he asked in dissatisfaction. The white crow was speechless at the words "little black brat." Most importantly, the black dog did not scold him anymore. The man in the dark light was completely speechless. "How am I black?" His face was as fair as jade, and there was no resemblance to black. The black dog looked at him, still annoyed. "You're related to me by blood and you're unwilling." He did not say it out loud, but the crow and the dark light were both powerful and sensitive. How could they not know what he meant? The black dog stared at him without saying a word. The man in the dark light did not speak either, but he returned the stare with the black dog. At the same time, his face twitched slightly. He was speechless. How could he be blackmailed like this? "I'm heroic and imposing, while your dog's face is so dark that water is dripping out of it. What's there to compare? What bloody blood relationship? I did leave behind descendants, and among them, there are many who are shockingly talented and heroic. They're all outstanding beings of different eras." The black dog finally spoke. He was so arrogant, praising his bloodline for being nature-defying. The man in the dark light ignored him. He did not even know his background, so how could he have any descendants? "Little black brat, I actually find you quite pleasing to the eye because I see many rare and precious qualities in you, as well as extraordinary methods." The black dog was actually praising someone. The white crow was stunned. Even a dog can say nice things about someone? In his memory, there had never been such a thing. The man in the black light remained unmoved, because according to legend, this mythical black dog often opened its mouth to spit out fragrant odor, and most people couldn't stand it. As expected, the black dog spoke again. "That's why I think you and I are very similar." "Is this the reason for praising someone?" Actually, it was to boast. The man in the black light said nothing. The black dog heaved a long sigh and said, in the words of a certain someone, we might be two similar flowers. If I were to wither today, you would be another me reborn from the ashes. The veins on the man's forehead bulged. Who the hell is a flower similar to you? Although we're on the same side, and we admire your great achievements over the years, and although your virtue isn't high, you're highly respected. But how are we similar? Suddenly, the black dog roared, damned duck, I'm the Emperor descending. Get over here or I'll slice you to death. Its aura surged. It had been dawdling just now because it was worried. In reality, it had been secretly probing the Soul River. Now that it was confident, the dog Emperor instantly struck again. Boom! In the distance, the white crow's true body was almost crushed. This was because the black dog had used some kind of forbidden ultimate art in conjunction with domain runes to almost kill it in an instant. The white crow's body exploded, and its soul light broke free. It quickly reformed in the distance, and finally stood on a piece of wretched soil, staring at the black dog. Not only was this dog still alive, but it was also so savage. There was endless coldness in the depths of the white crow's eyes. However, when it saw the Emperor's corpse on the black dog's back, it felt a chill run down its spine. There was boundless apprehension in its heart, and it was indeed very frightened. It knew very well how unfathomable a creature of that level was. Although there was evidence that the Supreme Celestial Emperor had fallen after experiencing countless battles, it was still afraid that an accident would happen. If the Emperor's corpse was abnormal or turned into a corpse here, it might lead to unimaginably terrifying consequences. The White Crow was fearful and worried. The ultimate land of the Soul River could not be disturbed now. It was a very critical moment, and there must not be any trouble. The man in the black light secretly transmitted his voice, indicating to the black dog not to fight to the death for now. At this moment they should threaten and intimidate the White Crow, and ask for a lot of benefits first. Of course I know. I'm not going to completely flip the table. This is extreme pressure in order to ask for more and greater benefits, the black dog replied calmly in the dark. In a sense, the two of them did have similar styles in certain aspects. They both came up with extortion first, and extorted enough benefits first. Regardless of whether there was a bloody battle at the Soul River or not, they would not be at a disadvantage. The black dog was now sure that there was a problem at the end of the Soul River. The supreme terror at the ultimate land of the Soul River was indeed crippled back then, and it might even be dead. Therefore, it became more and more composed, and was not in a hurry to fight. It was pondering that if the terror at the end of the Soul River was half dead, it might be able to use its trump card today, and sacrifice the thing left behind by the Celestial Emperor to kill it and get rid of all future troubles. The black dog's expression gradually became kind, but its heart was filled with monstrous, killing intent. It was prepared to go big today, overturn the Soul River, and eliminate one of the sources of the strangeness. Its only worry was that when the time came, the ancient underworld, the burial pit of the Celestial Emperor, and other places would sense it, and the unspeakable things would crawl out. The murderous intent in its heart reached the heavens, but Big Black's expression became more and more gentle. It wanted to stabilize all sides, and once again began to investigate in the dark. At this moment the black dog was very kind. It looked at the man in the dark light and said, "Little Black, come to think of it, you and I are very fated. We had a hot-blooded friendship back then." The man in the dark light wanted to say, "Hot-blooded my *SS. Back then, I was drenched in Black Dog's blood, and was unlucky enough to be banished to a dead end, and was almost sacrificed by the enemy. I wandered between life and death for a long time, and finally returned to life with great difficulty." He did not want to pay attention to this dog. To deal with it, the best way was to not play along with it, or else it would definitely have a mouth full of fragrance. At this moment, the black dog secretly investigated everywhere, and finally got a good grasp of the situation. It laughed coldly and said, "Dead duck, you were just a little brat back then, and now you dare to act big in front of me? Who are you trying to show me that cold face of yours? By the way, is your father still alive? Back then, I roasted half of his body to eat, and the poison made my face emit black mist for 3 months. What a terrible memory!" The white crow was furious. This dog was too despicable. Was it trying to poke at an old wound? Its father was gravely injured back then, and entered the ultimate wretched earth for nirvana, and had not come out until now. It sounded ridiculous, but if one thought about it, one could imagine how cruel the bloody war back then was. This dog had a certain obsession with cleanliness, but it did not care in the past, and ate poisonous crows at the end of the Soul River to replenish its energy. The black dog said, "Dead duck, everyone says that the pupil will surpass the master, but I don't think so. You're pitifully weak. You should just stew yourself, and come here as a sacrifice, so that I can have a good meal. Don't be insolent. This is the Soul River, not the Celestial Emperor Palace that has been destroyed into ruins." The white crow said coldly, and after a pause it continued, "I am not in my complete form, so today, I do not want to fight with you all. However, if you want to force me, then come. Who's afraid of who? At the same time, I have to remind you that, if there is a big battle, the Lord of the Soul River will definitely bathe the heavens in blood. Look, even a little crow dares to speak so harshly to me, sigh." The black dog sighed, looked up at the sky, and said, "Time is like a butcher's knife, whitening the hair of heroes, bending my waist. I'm getting a little old. How heartless!" The man in the black light did not speak. He knew that the dog was definitely preparing a big move, and he had a feeling that the dog was going to go on a killing spree today, and mess up the Soul River with blood. The calm now was most likely the last calm before the storm. Therefore, he remained silent, and prepared himself for a bloody battle. The white crow was speechless, but soon it felt a bone-piercing chill. It had a feeling that something was wrong today, and the dog's behavior was too benevolent. It was a little worried, and it had a premonition. Could it be that the dog emperor would explode today, go hysterical, and cause a life-and-death struggle? The white crow tried to sound it out, and began to show signs of compromise, hinting that everything could be discussed. Everything in this world has its own trajectory, and it's very difficult to change. Even you can't stop it, and you can't wipe out the strangeness you speak of. Otherwise there will be a big problem, the white crow advised. There's a reason why the world is always destroyed at the end of every era. Even if the celestial ruler revives and conquers the Soul River one day, nothing will be changed, and even if he succeeds. The white crow shook its head. "Why are you shaking your head?" The man in the black light said coldly. "Let's take a step back and say that even if we were destroyed, and the source of the strangeness you speak of, so what? It will only lead to something even more terrifying, and the heavens and worlds will cease to exist." "Ha ha!" the white crow said coldly. Of course, its coldness and indifference made it tremble again when it saw the black dog, and when it saw the Emperor's corpse on its back. Every time it saw that lifeless body, it would be terrified to the extreme, and it would not be as confident. The white crow pulled himself together and said, "In fact, it's not certain who's the source and who's the orthodox." At this time, the black dog's eyes were filled with boundless loneliness and coldness, and it was gradually becoming different from before. It silently carved many runes in this area, and directly tampered with the Soul River. Back then, its research on domains was very unconventional and few could compare to it. In short, it sometimes worked, sometimes it didn't. Now that it was serious, there was no doubt that it would work. "Calm down first," the man in the black light said secretly. "I know what I'm doing," the black dog said calmly. At worst, it would bid farewell to the world and return. It was already very tired after persevering for so many years, and it didn't have much time left. This was its last chance. Of course, before it died, it would attack the thing left behind by the celestial ruler, What are you doing? The white crow was shocked. Noisy, duckling. I'll give you a chance. Go to the end of the wretched earth and pick that medicine for me. I can smell its scent, son. Don't tell me you don't have it, or else you'll have to bear the consequences. I'm already here, and I'll wash the soul river with blood. The black dog gave its final warning. In front of the soul light cave, a group of people was silent. The master of the soul light cave, in particular, had sworn that he had nothing to do with the soul river, but now that he had returned home, he was dumbfounded. An ancient path led directly to the soul river. Could he still say that it had nothing to do with him? The most important thing was, who had opened it? Even ultimate creatures would find it difficult to discover this secret path. What else is there to say? The fused body of number 9 said. Let's attack and destroy him. Tai said in a low voice and was the first to attack. The others did not hesitate either. In the face of such a major issue, no one was allowed to go easy. Otherwise, they would be standing on the opposite side, and it would not end well. Several powerful cultivators attacked at the same time. Blazing light covered the front, and even someone as strong as the master of the soul light cave could not break free at all. After all, he was not Li Su. Moreover, he had been severely injured by 93 and was almost killed. He was only alive because he wanted to stay here to find evidence. Boom! The master of the soul light cave exploded. His body collapsed and his spirit burned. However, the few of them had a sense of propriety. They left behind a wisp of his true spirit and extracted it, wanting to understand the truth of this place. After a moment, their expressions became unsightly. As a window, the soul light cave had existed for too long, yet they had only discovered it now. The influence was too evil. At this time, the martial emperor finally sensed something again. He heard clearly that his disciple was crying and praying, "The patriarch has been snatched away by a dog." What the hell? The martial emperor was dumbfounded. He was sure that this time, he did not hear wrongly. He knew the cause and effect, and his face turned purple for a moment. At this time, someone in the soul light cave spoke with a puzzled expression. Who entered from this path? Although they are concealing it, it is a familiar aura. It is an old friend. 93 sighed softly. His expression was incomparably grave. He began to call out to the first mountain, asking his old brothers to revive. They had to all come. At this time, the first mountain shook. A grave cracked open, and human skin floated out. In the past, from number 1 to number 9, someone had been buried in a grave and thought to be dead. However, today, the grave cracked open and came out. At this time, number 9's expression was grave. He knew that something big was going to happen at the end of the Soul River. This time, not only did he bring an ancient killing weapon, but he also wanted to gather all his old brothers. Boom! With a violent tremor, white light flashed in the depths of the soul light cave. A vicious bird was struck out and exploded. A bloody mist and the remnants of the soul light were incinerated, turning into fiery light that streaked across the space and shot into the distance. A great battle has begun? The master of the Black Blood Research Institute cried out in surprise. Let's go. Hurry up and enter the cave. Number 9 shouted. He knew that the battle had begun. The martial emperor could not be bothered to look for the black dog anymore. He rushed in with Tai 1, number 9, and the others. At the end of the Soul River, in the world behind the door, the man in the black light was speechless. He looked at the black dog and thought, "Are you so impatient to directly attack the white crow? What happened to intimidation and extortion? You should get the benefits first." "It's fine. It is not completely dead yet. It will return soon, and there is still a remnant of its soul," the black dog said calmly. "Someone has entered," the man in the black light said. "No matter." The black dog did not care. It was not worried. However, its expression soon changed. It suddenly turned around, and its gaze pierced through space and time to look at the outside world. Its gaze was following the trail of the remnant soul light that had been burned after the white crow exploded. Then, it was speechless. In the outside world, Chu Feng had arrived. Why did he come here? After he broke out of the scripture cocoon, he had been waiting in the north for the black light to loot the empty nest, the martial emperor. He wanted to watch the show and was looking forward to the martial madman's nest being destroyed. He also wanted to see if the powerhouse in the black light would have any negative emotions when he found out that someone had looted the martial emperor's nest before him. In short, he waited in the north to watch the show, but no one came after waiting for a long time. Finally, he realized that the movement of the soul light was most likely a major event. After all, it involved the Soul River. Therefore, Chu Feng came to watch the eruption of a major event. Of course, he hid far enough and did not even think of approaching it. He stood on a high peak that spanned more than half of a province, gazing into the distance and feeling the fluctuations. In the end, not long after he appeared, a flame burned the sky and turned into a beam of light, flying toward him. His expression changed immediately. What was that? A secret treasure, a pie falling from the sky. Ziluan cried out. She was released and felt a burst of excitement when she saw it from afar and felt the intense energy fluctuations. In the end, the flame was gradually extinguished and became dimmer and dimmer. Its energy had declined to a shocking degree. Chu Feng felt that he could take it down. But when he opened his super fiery eyes, his face turned a little green. Was this a white crow? A white crow. It was a living creature. He immediately felt that things were far from good. Previously, this creature's energy fluctuations were violent and astonishing. Even if there was something wrong with it now and it was declining, it would still be difficult to provoke it. He turned around and wanted to leave, but that thing was smashing toward him at high speed. But the only thing that made him feel at ease was that the white crow exploded once again and shattered when it got close. But in a split second, the white crow regenerated its flesh and blood. But then, it exploded again with a pop. Chu Feng was astonished. He was no longer in a hurry because he could see that this white crow was finished. Its vitality was declining sharply. Just at this moment, the white crow continuously regenerated and exploded dozens of times. Its energy was almost dried up and only a wisp of soul light was left. Its flesh and blood were being reconstructed with difficulty. Of course, its blood had long lost its essence. This is a living monster. It's very strong. We can't escape in time. Ziluan was about to cry. What are you running for? A duck fell from the sky. Cook it and eat it. Chu Feng was ruthless. He felt the strong killing intent emitted by that white crow. It was as if it wished to exterminate all living things. It made people experience an extremely cold chill. Facing such a cold and murderous intent, he naturally didn't conceal it. He struck first to gain the upper hand and kill it. He felt that this white crow's current state wasn't even at the celestial venerable level. More than 99% of its soul light had been burned away, and its flesh was constantly exploding. There was no blood essence left. Chu Feng shouted, I don't care where this monster came from. Since it dares to show killing intent towards me, I'll roast it and eat it. He was extremely daring and really attacked. Although he looked frivolous on the surface, Chu Feng really went all out when he attacked. He didn't want to die in vain here. This kind of strange creature most likely had an unimaginable origin. He used all his strength and attacked first. Of course, it couldn't be any better if he could capture it alive. He could suppress it and perhaps obtain endless benefit. The white crow's gaze was ice-cold. When it fell close to them, it directly opened its mouth and used a secret technique to kill the man and woman in front of it. Even though its strength had declined, it was still very conceited and domineering. However, the next moment, it felt its blood run cold and the feathers on its body stood on end. It was too uneasy. It saw a black spear the length of a chopstick stabbing at it. Chu Feng threw caution to the wind and burned the soul soil frantically regardless of the price. That was because he realized more and more that this White Crow's foundation was most likely somewhat heaven-defying. Even though its strength had declined, it still gave people a very dangerous feeling. He had to strike first to gain the upper hand and kill it. The chopstick-length black spear was strengthened by the reincarnation soil. Black light tore the sky apart. It was too terrifying and simply wanted to annihilate everything in its way. The White Crow was shocked. How could a youth from the Yang realm have such a method? He actually had such a great killing power. However, this wasn't a surprise. In the next moment it screamed in fright. "You!" When it looked at Chu Feng's face, its face turned deathly pale. That was because this appearance. Why did it look somewhat terrifying? It felt somewhat familiar. What the hell? It involuntarily turned around and wanted to flee. It turned around and didn't care about anything else. There was only one word in its mind: escape. Although it realized in the instant it turned around that it couldn't be that person because that person was still alive. Moreover, that person didn't really believe in reincarnation and definitely wouldn't reincarnate. This was a tragedy. Its earlier wild thoughts, as well as its subsequent hesitation and turning around, made it absolutely impossible for it to evade the black spear. With a puff, Chu Feng took out the black spear just like that and stabbed it into the White Crow's buttock. Energy and aura erupted. Oh, caw. The White Crow was in so much pain that it let out a bestial cry. After the reincarnation soil's energy burned out, it actually slaughtered souls. It was too terrifying and didn't sound like a bird's cry at all. This was the reason why the Dog Emperor was in a daze in the distance. After seeing this scene, its face was filled with astonishment and speechlessness. "I, the Celestial Emperor, will kill you!" shouted Chu Feng. When the White Crow heard the words "I, the Celestial Emperor," its soul light trembled. But after hearing the words "will kill you," it was also convinced that this definitely wasn't that person. However, it was already too late. Its body was disintegrating and its weak soul light was cracking. At this moment, it really felt sullen and incomparably stuffy. It really wanted to roar that it had met with 8 lifetimes of bad luck today. It encountered 3 supreme-grade beings in one go, and all of them were shouting that they would kill it. It felt dense malice, as if the whole world was targeting it and the heavens had malice on its body. "I'll help people make an advertisement for great song that's been spoiled. Those who like it can go watch it." Chapter 1472. The White Crow was in so much pain that it wanted to bark like a dog. It was about to die, yet it still had to experience this kind of unbearable pain. It wasn't physical, but mostly at the spiritual level. The reincarnation earth burned and specialized in killing soul light. Apart from that, it was also angered. A mere youth with a low realm actually used a wooden spear to stab its buttock. Blood splashed into the void, and he even boasted shamelessly that he wanted to kill it. "Ah!" the White Crow cried angrily. It really wanted to kill everyone and bathe the 9 heavens in blood. Unfortunately, it was now too hollow and almost worn down. Its true blood had already lost its spirituality, and its soul light was collapsing on a large scale, turning into a rain of light that scattered in the air. Bang! The White Crow exploded. Its body turned into ashes, and at the same time, its soul light was burned into smoke. Woof! Leave behind a bit of its true spirit. In front of the Soul River, the black dog became anxious and shouted. It really didn't plan to kill the White Crow and still wanted to extort benefit. Caw! At the same time, an angry crow's cry came from the ultimate land of the Soul River. The white light was glaring, as if 100,000 suns had appeared at the same time, shaking the heavens. "Big Duck, you're still alive!" the black dog cried. Its black fur stood on end, and its murderous aura overflowed into the sky as it stared into the depths of the darkness. The ultimate land of the Soul River emitted terrifying white light, but it quickly dimmed again. An ancient crow had just awakened and attacked. It opened its mouth and sucked a true spirit into the ultimate wretched earth, saving the White Crow's life. The White Crow's father was definitely an extremely terrifying expert. However, it disappeared in a flash. After saving the White Crow's true spirit, it went silent again. At this moment, the White Crow was reborn. It flapped its wings, causing the soul river to surge and endless soul matter to gather. It emitted millions and millions of strands of white light, as if a star was burning and exploding. It was extremely furious. Today was too humiliating. If not for its father, it would have been stabbed to death by a youth. The White Crow's voice was ice-cold as it said, "It seems like you're forcing me to show my complete form." From the beginning, it had always emphasized that it wasn't a complete form. It had a fruit of Tao in the depths of the Soul River, and it was guarding the Supreme Land. Now, it didn't care anymore and charged out to settle accounts with the 3 supreme-grade beings. The Black Dog and the Man in the Black Light realized that a major situation had occurred in the ultimate land of the Soul River. Otherwise, White Crow would have turned hostile a long time ago. At this point, it was still just talking and not taking action. If it was anyone else, they would have been unable to tolerate it. In addition, the White Crow's father had only appeared for a brief moment before he went back into hiding and did not really come out. There was a big problem in the depths of the Soul River. This was their chance. Chu Feng was very regretful that the duck in his hands had flown away again. He realized that this was an unimaginable old monster that came from the Soul River. His foundation was heaven-defying. If he could keep a wisp of the remnant spirit, he might be able to pry into priceless secrets and scriptures. "Are we leaving?" Ziluan felt a wave of lingering fear. This place was too dangerous. There were actually creatures from the Soul River casually smashing down. "No hurry," Chu Feng said. "Don't tell me you're still waiting for a duck to fall from the sky?" Ziluan's face turned green. "You've realized it too. That was a great opportunity, like a meat pie falling from the sky." Chu Feng was regretful as he reflected on the fact that he hadn't grasped the opportunity just now. Ziluan really wanted to pass out. That was a monster from the Soul River. "What were you thinking about?" Chu Feng was speechless. He wanted to find a better place to hide and wait for the meat to fall from the sky. No, the duck to fall from the sky. "Actually, I'm very uncomfortable in my heart," Chu Feng added and sighed. "Back in the day, I was so happy in my homeland. I could roast whoever I wanted to eat. It didn't matter if they were extraterrestrial creatures or local vicious beasts. As long as they were enemies, they were all a dish. There was no problem that couldn't be solved with a roast." Ziluan rolled her eyes and her cheeks were puffed up. Back then, she had almost been roasted. Now, this state of mine, this life. Sigh, tears are streaming down my face. Life really isn't going according to plan. I can't run amok in the world of the living. Chu Feng sighed with a disappointed and frustrated look. Ziluan was speechless. "You've only been in the world of the living for a few years, yet you dare to have such great ambitions? If you were given time and had a certain level of strength, wouldn't you want to roast those empty nest ultimate experts and sell them? Sooner or later." Chu Feng raised his voice and swore to the heavens, "I'll bathe in the Soul River. I'll barbecue in the ancient underworld. I'll sweep through the heavens." Ziluan suddenly felt that this human trafficker wasn't disappointed and frustrated. It wasn't because he was feeling uncomfortable. Instead, he was even more arrogant than she was. This was an illness that had to be cured. Soon, she came to a realization and said, "I'm not sick. He's sick. I'll be back in the end." Chu Feng clasped his hands behind his back. Then, he took Ziluan with him and decisively ran away. At the end of the Soul River, in the world behind the door, both parties were in a standoff. As for the group of empty nest ultimate experts outside the door, they had finally arrived. Bang! Several people set the true spirit of the Soul Light Cave's master on fire like fireworks, causing it to explode and extinguish both body and soul. They had to get rid of him first. "Are we really going in?" someone whispered. This was the Soul River. Even if they were as powerful as they had heard of it and even had unconventional contact with it, they had never barged in with their true bodies. Now, they had arrived at the end of the Soul River. A door blocked the way. It was engraved with the mottled aura of time, and there was dried black blood. Who had left this behind? Some were human. Legend had it that the celestial emperor had once entered this door and set foot on an incomparably terrifying battlefield. "Since we're already here, let's go in," Tai said. At this level, it was too difficult to advance further. There was almost no way out. The road ahead had been cut off. The world behind the door was said to have made the celestial emperor bleed. Perhaps it could connect their broken path. The most important thing was that there was a fierce person opening the way ahead. Who was it? These people were extremely powerful. After making up their minds, they entered with a flash. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at the depths of the world behind the door. From afar, they saw a black light that resembled a black mountain blocking the way. It was heavy and oppressive as it confronted the white crows in the upper reaches of the Soul River. For a moment, they couldn't shift their gazes away. Which of the empty nest ultimate experts wasn't a super extraordinary creature? Their spiritual senses were extremely sharp. Now, the black light had risen sharply and deliberately spread, filling the entire space and concealing its true body. However, it still gave them a sense of familiarity and strangeness. "Who are you?" An old fellow among the ultimate existences had a peculiar expression in his eyes. He couldn't help but ask when everyone else was staring. At this moment, he was incomparably puzzled because a sense of familiarity assaulted his senses. It was as if they had met before. The more the others looked, the more they felt that something was amiss. They definitely recognized the creature in the black light. It was useless even if they deliberately hid it. They could recognize it even if it was burnt to ashes. The old ultimate experts were dumbstruck and simply couldn't believe their eyes. How could he appear again? Wasn't he just killed not long ago? "Li Su, you old sly thing!" A loud roar resounded through the Soul River and traveled along the passage to the Yang realm. This person was furious. Not long ago, they had fought to the death and finally killed this great enemy with great difficulty. In the end, how long had it been? He's alive and kicking again? In the Yang realm, the old man wasn't far from Qingzhou. He was feeling dejected when he suddenly heard this roar filled with intense hostility. He was immediately resentful. "My big brother is already dead. After being murdered by you, you still won't let him go. Are you even going to curse the name of a dead person?" The old man was filled with grief and anger. "Li Su, you still haven't died?" Another loud roar rang out. This time, it was filled with killing intent and anger from the old ultimate experts. Who was it that they had killed before? The main character actually still had the mood to provoke the Soul River. It was truly preposterous. In the outside world, many people were also stunned. What did they just hear? Li Su was alive again? Didn't he just die not long ago? Heaven and earth mourned as the old ultimate experts suppressed him together. "Everyone, long time no see. I really missed you." The man in the black light greeted with a deeply moved expression. "Li Su!" Someone shouted. Was this really him? In the outside world, the people of Qingzhou heard this and were shaken. What kind of situation was this? Li Su was alive again? The old man was dumbstruck. He was starting to doubt his life. "Big brother, you're still alive?" Who was the person that he was accompanying before? He accompanied him to reminisce in the Yang realm. In the end, he turned into a rain of light and turned into dust, never to be seen again. At that time, the old man cried like a child. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead as he sent off his sworn brother. "I don't know why, but I want to cry now. Big brother, you're really a scammer. I should call you Big Pitli. You lied to your sworn brother and cheated him. I've shed so many tears. Don't you have a guilty conscience? The old man's cheeks were streaming with tears. He was so angry. Did that pit even bury their own people like that? It simply didn't differentiate between friend and foe. The old man was speechless. In Qingzhou, many people also didn't dare to believe it. They were wondering if they had heard wrongly. This explosive news really left them speechless. The Soul River, the world behind the door. A few people stared at the black light. They didn't have good expressions, and their eyes were filled with ominous glints. Previously, they had fought to the death, ganged up on this person, and hunted the prehistoric Black Hand. Just what kind of thing had they killed? He was still alive and well, and he was still smiling. It was really unbearable. Everyone, I have indeed died. This is actually just an obsession of mine. Li Su shook his head and sighed. An obsession and not his true body? In fact, he had really died? To hell with obsessions. Some people gritted their teeth. The one who had died earlier said that he was an obsession, and now he was saying this again? Everyone, this Li has been lonely all my life. Back then, I suffered a calamity, and my true body is indeed long gone. There is only a streak of black light protecting my soul. I sigh at the impermanence of the world. Life is helpless, and fate is full of misfortune. I am so sad. Li Su was a bit gloomy as he once again said that he was an obsession. The few people were doubtful and still didn't believe him. In the outside world, the old man's cheeks were streaming with tears again. He really wanted to say, "Big brother, are you dead or not? Give me a definite answer." Right now, he was really a bit confused. "Li Su, you old scoundrel. We're already in such a predicament, yet you still dare to speak carelessly. Previously, when we were outside the starry sky, you said that it was an obsession. But now you're still saying this. You're clearly looking down on us. You're lying through your teeth." Some people roared. They really couldn't stand him. This old scoundrel was really lacking in morals, and they really wanted to skin him alive. Li Su sighed softly and said, "Previously, it was indeed an obsession. I longed for the old land, and there was not a moment that I didn't want to see the old land again. I wanted to see the graves of my old friends that I would never see again. Sigh. How many things can be redone? How many people can no longer wait? I want to cry, but I don't have any tears left." Then, he said, "Right now, I am another obsession." The few people's eyes turned green. Previously, an obsession had died, and now, he actually had the cheek to say that this was another obsession? An old ultimate faintly said, "How many obsessions do you have?" The others were also burning with anger. They really wanted to kill him. Now, they wanted to ask him if this obsession was truly dead after it dissipated. Li Su sighed ruefully and said, "Perhaps I am a person with many obsessions and thoughts. Therefore, even if I die a few times, new obsessions will still be born." Scram! The old ultimate present only wanted to say this word. They really wanted to smash his face. Although they could do anything as an enemy, this guy was too infuriating. According to the prehistoric Dark Hand, he had too many obsessions. They couldn't kill him, but they could still live after they were destroyed. The few of them gritted their teeth. This was an excuse. Li Xuanzi's real body shouldn't be dead. Suddenly, Tai Yi's expression changed and he said, "Wait, why do I have the aura of my cave abode on you? Where did you go?" The few people's expressions changed abruptly. In an instant they all sensed something. That damned black bastard! They all understood that the uneasiness in their hearts had come true because of this old scoundrel. He had gone to raid their houses. How shameful! How hateful! Only 963 slowly walked over. He was neither impatient nor flustered. On the contrary, he was smiling like a wrinkled and withered flower bud. "I say, you bunch of brats, be serious. What do you think this place is?" In the distance, the black dog couldn't stand it anymore and shouted. The martial madman's eyes were green, and he instantly stared at it. At this moment, he heard the prayers of his disciples. The saying that their patriarch had been taken away by a dog was too demonic, and it kept echoing in his ears. When he saw the black dog, his first thought was that it was most likely the dog-eat-dog's doing. He felt like he was going crazy. How lively! At this moment, another humanoid creature walked over from the outside. His whole body was rotting, and his figure was quite bloated. He entered the Soul Light Cave. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.